After dropping off Olivia Sullivan, Michael Thompson headed to a nearby mall to buy gifts. He already had a gift prepared for Arthur Sullivan. Knowing Arthur's penchant for the sophisticated and his particular love for calligraphy and painting, Michael had prepared one of his own bamboo paintings for him. Honestly, if he could have gotten his hands on a Howard Banks painting for Arthur, the old man would probably grin so wide he'd lose a couple of teeth. Maybe even gift wrap his own granddaughter and ship her straight to Michael's doorstep. But getting a Howard Banks painting wasn't that easy, not even for Michael, his own apprentice. Howard Banks had a habit. Only works he was truly satisfied with would ever see the light of day. Any piece deemed unsatisfactory was torn up the moment it was finished. This habit extended to his apprentice, Michael. Michael himself had lost count of how many of his paintings his master, Howard Banks, had torn up. Because of this, genuine Howard Banks pieces on the market were actually quite rare. Incidentally, although Howard Banks was a master of national renown, his paintings commanded significantly different prices compared to other famous modern masters. There wasn't much to be done about it. A painting truly skyrockets in value only after the artist's death. With no more new works being produced, every existing piece becomes finite, making them exceptionally precious. Think of Van Gogh. Even though his genuine works can fetch hundreds of millions of dollars today, he was just a destitute painter during his lifetime. As for a young painter like Michael Thompson, despite winning several awards and gaining some recognition within artistic circles, his paintings weren't worth much money yet. This was precisely why fewer and fewer artists persisted with traditional Chinese painting. After all, one couldn't live on dreams alone. The most crucial prerequisite was earning enough money to eat and survive. Painting really wasn't as profitable as sculpting. After all, a sheet of Xian paper cost pennies, while the raw materials for a single sculpture could cost tens or even hundreds of thousands of yuan, sometimes even reaching hundreds of thousands of dollars. The profit margins were considerable. Michael mulled it over. For his first formal visit to the Sullivan family as Olivia Sullivan's boyfriend, just bringing one of his own paintings felt a bit inadequate. Arthur Sullivan might not mind, but there were other people in the Sullivan family. He didn't want Olivia to be subjected to gossip behind her back because of him. So, no matter what, he needed to make sure he put up a good front. Resigned to splurging, Michael went to the mall and bought some high-end cigarettes and liquor, and also got himself a more formal outfit. All told, he spent tens of thousands of yuan. Appearance-wise, at least, he thought he looked decent enough. Just as Michael was in the middle of his shopping spree at the mall, he got a call from his mom, Margaret Thompson. "You're back and you don't even come home? Where have you been gallivanting off to? For someone so capable, I haven't seen you bring a girlfriend home yet." Margaret gave her son quite the earful over the phone. Michael counted his gifts while replying into the phone. "Mom, I'm bringing my girlfriend home in a couple of days. Don't worry." Margaret was momentarily speechless, unsure if Michael was joking or serious. After holding back for a long moment, she asked, "Which one?" Her question caught Michael off guard. His eyes widened in surprise. "What do you mean, which one? I mean, is it the one from high school?" Margaret knew Michael had a girlfriend around the time he graduated high school. He had even solemnly vowed to bring the girl home, but then the matter just fizzled out. She had assumed they'd broken up and hadn't dared bring it up in front of Michael since. Michael found it slightly amusing. "Of course, it's the one from high school, Mom. She's the only one I've ever dated. What do you take your son for? Some kind of player? I'm the devoted type, okay." Margaret said earnestly, "Well, I don't expect you to be as straight-laced as your father. Just try not to break too many hearts." "That sounds like prejudice against your own son." "You're my son. Don't you think I know what you're like?" Margaret scoffed, then asked a little uncertainly, "So, you're really bringing that girl home in a couple of days?" Michael affirmed, "Of course. When have I, Michael Thompson, ever broken my word?" Margaret immediately grew anxious, cursing Michael affectionately in her local dialect. "You damn kid. Why are you only telling me now? Couldn't you have said something sooner? There's no time to prepare." "Prepare what? We're just having a meal together. Just buy some groceries the day before. Don't I need to prepare red envelopes or something? Should we get her a gold ring?" "Mom, we're just meeting. It's not like we're getting engaged. What are you thinking?" Michael could hear the panic in Margaret's voice and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He picked up his gifts, left the mall, and hailed a taxi heading towards the Sullivan residence. "All right, Mom. I have to go now. You're not coming home for dinner tonight? I prepared a whole spread." "Can't make it tonight. I have important business." "You brat. What kind of important business could you possibly have?" Michael chuckled. "Go into my girlfriend's house to discuss matters of lifelong importance." Back at the Thompson residence, Margaret stared at her phone after ending the call with Michael, stunned silent for a long moment. Beside her, Robert Thompson asked curiously, What were you two talking about? Is our boy not coming home for dinner tonight? Margaret shook her head, a strange expression on her face as she muttered, Your son? He's really something else now. I don't think I can handle him anymore. Wouldn't surprise me if he flew off to the moon in a couple of years. Robert was puzzled. What's wrong? Did the little rascal make you angry? No, Margaret said. He said he's going to his future in-law's place for dinner tonight and won't be back. Robert Thompson was also dumbfounded by his wife's words. Margaret suddenly felt restless and stood up, heading for the door. Robert asked, Where are you going? I can't just sit here. I need to go buy a couple of boxes of diapers to keep at home, just in case. I have a feeling we'll be needing them within 2 years. Robert, it really did seem possible. After buying the gifts, Michael went straight to the Sullivan residence. Olivia Sullivan answered the door herself. The moment she saw him, she couldn't hide the joy on her face. She had been worried Michael might get cold feet and suddenly decide not to come. Even though she knew Michael wasn't that kind of person, now that the moment of meeting the parents had arrived, Olivia was so nervous her palms were sweating, her mind racing with uncontrollable thoughts. She quickly ushered Michael inside. Seeing him laden with bags large and small, she mumbled, Why did you buy so much? Michael teased. If I didn't bring enough, how could I show how important you are to me? Smooth talker. Olivia suppressed a smile as she led Michael further into the house. It wasn't Michael's first time visiting the Sullivan home, so he was relatively relaxed. He placed the gifts on the coffee table in the living room and asked, Is Arthur Sullivan not home? Grandpa's home. I'll go upstairs and let him know you're here. Just wait here for a moment. Olivia instructed Michael, then trotted upstairs. Oh, Michael Thompson is here. In his second-floor study, Arthur Sullivan, having just seen his granddaughter rush out, was a bit surprised to hear of Michael's arrival. Although Michael had gone to school in Boston in the latter half of his junior year, and they'd hardly seen each other since, Arthur still remembered the young man who had left a deep impression on him, not to mention saved his life. He had originally wanted to introduce Michael to his old friend, Howard Banks, as a student, partly out of appreciation for his talent, and partly to repay the life-saving favor. However, due to various reasons, it hadn't worked out at the time. It was an unexpected twist of fate that Michael had become Howard's apprentice after all. Furthermore, the thoughtful young man always called on Christmas, even if he couldn't visit in person, and had sent him many interesting gadgets, including the family heirloom now sitting on his desk. Arthur stroked his beard and looked at his granddaughter with a smile. You came back with him? But why would he come to see me before even going home? Grandpa, Olivia Sullivan said, a little shyly. Michael and I, well, you see, we're dating. Arthur was momentarily speechless. So that was why the boy had been so attentive. His eyes had been on his granddaughter all along. He'd known Olivia had liked Michael in high school, and coupled with his own appreciation for the young man, he wasn't opposed to their relationship. In fact, he became quite intrigued. Since when? Well, after graduation, Michael confessed and she stammered, her face getting redder and redder. I saw how much effort he'd put in, and I thought it would be too cruel to reject him, so I thought I'd give it a try. Is that so? Arthur smacked his lips. So you don't really like him? That won't do. My granddaughter shouldn't have to settle. I understand. I'll go send Michael Thompson away. Olivia, who had spoken out of sheer shyness, was stunned. Seeing her grandfather stand up with a serious expression, she panicked and rushed to stop him. No, don't. I like him, I do. Seeing his granddaughter on the verge of tears, Arthur burst out laughing. If you like him, just admit it. Olivia sulked, her head lowered, feeling both embarrassed and shy. Arthur asked, So, did you ask him to be your boyfriend, or did he ask you? He asked. Oh. I asked him to ask. Oh. Arthur nodded, certain his granddaughter wasn't lying this time. He was about to ask more when Olivia, both embarrassed and exasperated, said, Okay, Arthur Sullivan, Michael is still waiting downstairs. We shouldn't keep him waiting too long. Knowing his granddaughter would genuinely get angry if he continued, Arthur smiled and decided to drop the subject. He went downstairs to meet Michael Thompson, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. While waiting for Olivia Sullivan to bring Arthur down, Michael Thompson sat in the living room, fiddling with his hair. He hadn't expected to be nervous, but now that the moment was here, he couldn't help it. This was different from his past life, when he'd come to the Sullivan house to take Olivia away. Back then, he hadn't considered any of them family, only enemies. But this time, Arthur Sullivan was someone he respected, and his opinion of his future grandson-in-law mattered. As Michael Thompson sat on the sofa, he became aware of a girl, quite pretty and bearing a resemblance to Olivia Sullivan, squatting beside him, studying him with narrowed eyes. The girl stared at Michael Thompson, making him feel a little uneasy. He looked at her with surprise. The girl narrowed her eyes and smiled. Michael Thompson, you dare to come to my house? Michael Thompson thought. He was completely confused and didn't recognize the girl at all. However, seeing the resemblance in her eyes and brows to Olivia Sullivan, he guessed that she was a member of the Sullivan family. The girl, perhaps noticing the confusion in Michael Thompson's eyes, bristled. Don't tell me you don't recognize me? She flipped her hair back a little, bringing her pretty face closer to Michael Thompson's. How about now? Michael Thompson observed her carefully. She looked like a high school student, and indeed resembled Olivia Sullivan, though not as strikingly beautiful. She had a pleasant face and was considerably taller than Olivia. Honestly, compared to this girl, Olivia Sullivan, already in college, seemed more childish. Although he didn't recognize her, Michael Thompson knew the Sullivan family dynamics. Thinking through the family members who fit the girl's age, he asked tentatively, Violet Sullivan? You finally recognize me. Violet Sullivan said through gritted teeth, the veins in her forehead throbbing. She and Michael Thompson hadn't seen each other for almost 2 years, but she still remembered the time she ran away from home and he sold her out to her family. She held a grudge. Violet Sullivan had planned to confront Michael Thompson at Oakwood High School, but he transferred to Boston during the second semester, and they hadn't seen each other since. Now, Michael Thompson was a freshman in college, and Violet Sullivan was a high school senior. Michael Thompson looked at Violet Sullivan, a little surprised. He found it hard to connect this clean-cut, pretty girl with a rebellious teenager who had dyed purple hair and heavy eyeliner. Back then, Violet Sullivan wasn't exactly ugly, but her appearance was certainly intimidating. Had emo kids, all grown up? You've changed a lot, Michael Thompson commented, gesturing to her hair. Violet Sullivan self-consciously raised a hand to shield her hair. What are you looking at? She snapped. When she was younger, she followed her friends' trends, and during the emo phase, she went all in, filling her messenger space with angsty posts. But after running away and finding none of her so-called best friends willing to help, it was Michael Thompson, of all people, who had given her some money. After that incident, Violet Sullivan was like a different person. She cut ties with her former gang, even changed schools, and her style reverted to something more typical for her age. She now considered her rebellious phase a dark chapter in her life. Michael Thompson's comment hit a nerve, making her defensive. Violet Sullivan looked at Michael Thompson, who hadn't changed much in 2 years, took a deep breath, and sat on the sofa next to him. Why are you at my house? Though her tone was still sharp, she no longer cared as much about what happened and had abandoned her childish revenge plans. Thinking back calmly, although Michael Thompson was blunt and lacked manners, at least he'd picked her up from the Wilson family's house, and even lent her money. Of all the friends she'd begged, it was this guy, who wasn't even really a friend, who helped her. Michael Thompson casually replied, to meet your parents. I'm your sister's boyfriend. My sister. Violet Sullivan froze, then her eyes widened in shock. You're actually dating Olivia Sullivan? She'd sensed something going on between Olivia Sullivan and Michael Thompson, but she thought it was a one-sided crush from Olivia. She hadn't expected that in the time they'd been apart, Olivia Sullivan had actually succeeded. Violet Sullivan was starting to see her previously unimpressive cousin in a new light. To be able to handle such a blunt man, she had an iron stomach. Just as Violet Sullivan exclaimed her surprise, Olivia Sullivan was coming down the stairs with Arthur Sullivan and overheard her. Olivia immediately yelled back indignantly, Who's Lucas? Olivia Sullivan came downstairs just in time to hear Violet Sullivan bad-mouthing her. The name Lucas hit a particular nerve, making her instantly bristle. But Violet Sullivan wasn't the least bit afraid of her older sister. Looking up to see Olivia descending the stairs, she stood up from the sofa and gestured with her hand, highlighting the height difference between them. She didn't say a word, but her actions spoke volumes. Olivia knew she was a bit of a late bloomer compared to her peers, which was precisely why she was most sensitive about it. Yet, unfortunately, there wasn't much she could do about Violet Sullivan. Seeing his girlfriend's pitiful, helpless gaze turn towards him, Michael Thompson thought for a moment before saying to Violet, As long as Olivia Sullivan isn't stuck in some cringy emo phase, I'm fine with it. Michael Thompson, you bastard. She completely lost it. The term emo phase, or its messenger equivalent, had long been a meme online, and Violet considered her own such phase a dark, embarrassing chapter of her past. Yet Michael showed her no mercy, hitting her right where it hurt, straight to her face. How could Violet Sullivan possibly stand it? She got so angry she started cursing. That damn man, still as sharp-tongued and mean as ever. Michael Thompson remained unfazed. Who told this little brat to pick on Olivia Sullivan first? Ever the protector, Olivia Sullivan pursed her lips, smiling smugly. She walked over, linked arms with Michael Thompson, and practically flaunted him in front of Violet Sullivan. See? My man. Violet Sullivan gritted her teeth, glaring at them. This damn couple was so infuriating. However, Arthur Sullivan was also present. He quickly put on a stern face and gave them both a piece of his mind. Violet Sullivan, mind your manners in front of our guest. Then, to Olivia Sullivan, you too, Olivia Sullivan. You're a university student now. Still arguing with your younger sister? Olivia Sullivan pouted, clearly displeased, but in front of her grandfather, she could only nod obediently. Violet Sullivan, though no longer a little rebel, wasn't about to suddenly transform into a perfectly behaved girl. She merely pursed her lips at Arthur Sullivan's scolding, looking as if she wasn't taking it to heart at all. Later that evening, Arthur Sullivan invited Michael Thompson to stay for dinner. I've already heard from Olivia Sullivan about you two dating, Arthur Sullivan said kindly to Michael Thompson. People believe in choosing their own partners these days. Since you two are together, the family won't stand in your way. But Olivia Sullivan is my granddaughter, after all. As her grandfather, I have to ask, what are your intentions for the future? Michael Thompson replied with perfect seriousness, 2 kids in 3 years. Arthur Sullivan's face froze. Olivia Sullivan blushed crimson, furiously kicking Michael Thompson under the table, her eyes shooting daggers at him. After a long moment of stunned silence, Arthur Sullivan spoke, his expression peculiar. Well, having 3 kids isn't the issue. Our family can afford the fines. No. Olivia Sullivan thought frantically. Weren't we just supposed to be meeting the family today? This isn't even close to an engagement. Face flushed red, Olivia Sullivan exclaimed. Grandpa, Michael Thompson is joking. Arthur Sullivan finally snapped back to reality. He pondered for a moment, then said, getting married during university. It's not entirely out of the question. You think so too, sir? Michael Thompson's eyes instantly lit up. He suddenly felt a kinship with Arthur Sullivan. But Arthur Sullivan quickly poured cold water on his enthusiasm. That being said, what are your plans for the future? I need to know if I'm entrusting my granddaughter to someone reliable, don't I? Michael Thompson asked cautiously. So what are your standards? Arthur Sullivan stated firmly. At the very least, she shouldn't be worse off than she is now. He leaned forward slightly, steepling his fingers. Although you and Olivia Sullivan just graduated from high school, and talking about these things might seem premature, honestly, for years of university will pass in the blink of an eye. Then you'll have to face some rather practical matters. Work, income, housing. Arthur Sullivan continued. You're involved in the arts, so you might find an old man like me talking about these mundane topics rather crass. But one can't escape the nitty-gritty of life. Do you have any concrete plans? For example, your future career. After graduation, are you thinking of entering government service? Or perhaps going into business? Asking such questions showed Arthur Sullivan was already considering how he might help Michael Thompson's future. He didn't mind giving a potential grandson-in-law a boost, provided Michael Thompson himself had the ambition. Olivia Sullivan watched Michael Thompson anxiously, wondering how he would answer. She knew that since Michael Thompson had been reborn, his desire for certain worldly things had faded. He had no interest in business, and the civil service system path was definitely not for him. But surely someone as tactful as Michael Thompson would know how to finesse his answer for her grandfather? Just go along with what Grandpa suggested. Even if it wasn't truly from the heart, just act a little ambitious. But as it turned out, Michael Thompson was exceptionally direct this time. Can't I just be an artist? This answer didn't surprise Arthur Sullivan. After all, Michael Thompson was already studying under Howard Banks, and, coupled with his own talent, his path seemed quite clear. If you wanted to go into business, you know I could give you a significant head start, Arthur Sullivan probed. It should be more profitable than your painting. Your teacher, Howard Banks, is much more famous than I am, but when it comes to making money, what I earn in a year is probably what Howard Banks earns in 10. Are you sure you still want to be a painter? Arthur Sullivan wasn't lying. Howard Banks was indeed very famous, a national treasure in the world of traditional Chinese painting, whose works could fetch high 7-figure sums at auction. But compared to a business magnate like the head of the Sullivan family, with multinational operations spanning over 100 countries, it truly didn't compare. Michael Thompson's talent for painting was exceptional, bordering on prodigious. Yet, even if he became a great artist comparable to Picasso, his earning potential likely wouldn't match that of running a business. If Michael Thompson had ambitions in business, he surely wouldn't refuse Arthur Sullivan's support. It would be an incredible windfall. But Michael Thompson no longer cared about that. As long as I have enough money to live on, that's sufficient. Beyond that, I think doing what I love is what matters. Arthur Sullivan was somewhat moved by these words. An old man like him, what did he even need money for? Yet here he was, supporting the family with his aging body. For what? Who was he earning all this money for? Arthur Sullivan couldn't quite find the answer, but he knew he couldn't stop. If he did, the family might fall apart. He never expected that a truth he'd spent most of his life grasping would be so simply articulated by someone as young as Michael Thompson. Since this is your heartfelt desire, then I'll respect your wishes, Arthur Sullivan said. Having understood Michael Thompson's perspective, he began mentally planning how he could pave the way for his future grandson-in-law, considering various contacts. But for the moment, he pushed those thoughts aside, smiled faintly, and said, "Let's eat first." The dinner itself was quite pleasant. For some reason, none of the other Sullivans were back tonight, leaving just Arthur Sullivan and the two younger ones, Olivia and Violet, to eat with Michael Thompson. During the meal, Violet Sullivan began asking Michael Thompson about the Rhode Island School of Design with great interest. It was only then that Michael learned Violet, like him, was an art student. However, Violet hadn't focused much on her studies in previous years. Although she was now working hard to catch up on her academics, her current grades meant getting into RISD would still be a long shot. "Is the early admission program at your school hard?" Violet asked curiously. She knew her academic scores were weak, so she hoped to get into RISD through the early admission program, just like Michael Thompson. If she could get through early admission successfully, the SAT score requirement would be much lower, significantly reducing the difficulty. Michael Thompson thought for a moment and said, "It's not too hard. You just need to win a few awards." "What kind of awards?" "Like school prizes. The Chi Baisher Award, the National Youth Calligraphy and Painting Award, things like that." Violet Sullivan's face fell instantly. If she could win those kinds of national awards, would she even need to ask Michael Thompson for advice? This guy was really something else. Violet felt like shoving her foot into Michael Thompson's mouth just to give him a taste. However, if Michael Thompson knew what Violet was thinking, he would definitely cry foul. He didn't really have any useful advice for Violet. After all, when he applied through early admission, he had already won numerous awards. As long as he passed the written test, he could have skipped the interview and still gotten in. His experience wasn't very helpful. Arthur Sullivan wasn't fully aware of Michael Thompson's experiences over the past 2 years while staying with his old friend. Now, seeing Michael Thompson practically becoming his grandson-in-law, he asked him a few questions during dinner. Michael Thompson answered each one. And as Arthur Sullivan listened to the accomplishments he'd achieved in less than 2 years, a satisfied look appeared in his eyes. His initial judgment hadn't been wrong. This young man was truly exceptionally talented. After dinner, Arthur Sullivan intended to have the housekeeper prepare a room for Michael Thompson to stay the night. "From now on, you're not an outsider. Just stay here tonight." Michael Thompson politely declined. "Grandpa Sullivan, I just arrived in Green Valley today and came straight here. I really should head back tonight, otherwise it'll be hard to explain to my family." Arthur Sullivan looked a bit disappointed, but nodded in understanding. "That makes sense. You head back then. But perhaps when your family is free, our two families could have dinner together sometime." Olivia Sullivan blushed, tugging at Arthur Sullivan's sleeve and muttering awkwardly, "Grandpawy, we're not quite at the stage of meeting the parents yet." She had a feeling that if these two kept talking, she'd be getting married tomorrow. It was moving way too fast. Arthur Sullivan looked at his blushing granddaughter, stroked his beard, and burst out laughing. Just then, Michael Thompson leaned closer to Olivia Sullivan and asked quietly, "Want to come home with me?" "WH what?" "Now." Olivia Sullivan became completely flustered, waving her hands frantically. No. It's too late tonight." Michael Thompson looked a little regretful. Seems he couldn't coax her away tonight. "Tomorrow, then?" You promised me." Olivia Sullivan screwed her eyes shut and gritted her teeth. "Fine, tomorrow. Tomorrow it is. You can pick me up later. I need to buy a gift first." Michael Thompson returned to Pine Creek Town from Green Valley, chauffeured back by a driver from the Sullivan family. As they passed a gas station, he paused, then got out, intending to buy a few things from the station's convenience store to take home. He hadn't brought any souvenirs back from Boston, figuring it was just his own family he was returning to. However, since he hadn't gone straight home this time, stopping at his girlfriend's place first, he suspected Margaret Thompson wouldn't be too pleased. He might as well buy some gifts now and pass them off as Boston specialties to save himself an earful from his mom. Michael Thompson casually picked out a few items and left, laden with bags. By the time he reached his doorstep, it was already past 9 p.m. Unsure of Margaret Thompson's current mood, He lingered at the gate, peering sneakily toward the house. But the Thompson family's yard was large, and he couldn't see the main house from the entrance. He pulled out his phone and sent a message via messenger to Emily Thompson, who had been home for a while. Air Force 101 calling command. Have reached designated coordinates. What's the ground situation? Permission to land? Emily quickly replied. Command copies. Stand by. I'll reconnoiter. A moment later, another message came through. Ground situation clear. Proceed with landing. Roger that. Michael pocketed his phone, finally feeling safe enough to open the gate and walk into the yard. When he entered the Thompson house, the living room TV was still on, but the sofa was empty. The lights in the kitchen were on, however, and the hum of the range hood was audible. Following the aroma, Michael headed into the kitchen to find Margaret Thompson cooking. Mom, I'm back. What you making? Smells good, he grinned, sidling up to her. Margaret Thompson shot him a glance but didn't respond. What's wrong? Did Dad make you mad? Michael peered into the pot on the stove. Gravy was simmering. His appetite instantly flared. See? Mom always takes care of her boy. Haven't even been home 5 minutes, and you've already got a late-night snack ready. Shoo shoo. None for you. Margaret swatted his hand away irritably, planting her hands on her hips. The old one didn't make me mad, but the young one certainly did. Getting back to town and going straight to your girlfriend's instead of coming home? What's next? When you get married, are you going to spend Christmas at her family's place too? Hearing Margaret's complaints, Michael quickly retorted, No way. When the time comes, I'll definitely bring my wife home for the New Year's celebration. You ungrateful brat. Other guys forget their moms once they get a wife. You've forgotten yours before you even have one. Margaret poked Michael's forehead as she scolded him. Michael struck a mock delicate pose. Don't you worry, Mom. I'll always be your darling boy. Margaret grabbed the rolling pin as if to whack him, and Michael scampered out of the kitchen like a rabbit. However, seeing the gifts Michael had brought back for her, her anger mostly dissipated. A little later, Michael sat in the living room, slurping noodles drenched in gravy from a bowl. Mom, where's Dad? He asked, noticing his father, Robert Thompson, wasn't home. Usually, his parents went to bed early. By this hour, they'd normally be getting ready to turn in. Especially since today was the day he was coming home. Margaret replied, Your father's over at the mine. The workers are off for the Thanksgiving break, so it's a good time for him and the accountant over there to settle the books. Lots to do. I actually made this snack for him, not knowing what time you'd wander in tonight. By the way, when you went to that girl's house today, did you meet her family? I still don't know anything about her family situation. Mentioning this made her, as a mother, quite nervous. Although the Thompson family was reasonably well off and her son was doing all right for himself, what if her family looked down on them? What if they disapproved of the Thompsons being rural folks? Margaret grumbled inwardly, thinking her eldest son was so thoughtless, just showing up at the girl's house with his suitcase without any proper planning. And here she was, his mother, still not knowing what the girl looked like, how many people were in her family, or what their circumstances were. All she knew was that she was a local from Green Valley and had been Michael's classmate at Oakwood High School. Michael laughed heartily. Relax, relax. I met her grandfather before. Everything went smoothly, and her family likes me. That statement wasn't entirely true, but not entirely false either. Arthur Sullivan did appreciate Michael Thompson and didn't object to him dating his granddaughter. But Olivia Sullivan's parents. Odds were, Olivia hadn't even told him about Michael yet. Michael wasn't keen on dealing with those potentially nightmarish in-laws anyway. If things turned ugly, Olivia would be caught in a difficult position. Hearing his reassurances, Margaret breathed a sigh of relief, but immediately started complaining again. But I haven't even met her yet. I'll bring her home tomorrow for you and Dad to meet. Tomorrow. Margaret stared at him, stunned. She pinched his arm sharply. You wretched child. Why didn't you say so sooner? It's no big deal, Michael said nonchalantly. Just setting another place at the table. How can it be the same? It's her first time visiting. Don't we need to make a good family impression? Margaret was very dissatisfied with Michael's dismissive attitude and started muttering, listing preparations. The house needed to be cleaned until it sparkled, and she needed to buy good ingredients tomorrow to cook a proper feast. Michael found this amusing. Olivia Sullivan had been to the Thompson house before. Back during the New Year celebration with Honors Class A, she'd even left with a big bag of smoked meat from them. No, I need to tidy myself up, Margaret fretted. Do I look too fierce? Will I give her the impression of a wicked mother-in-law? She touched her own plump face, looking worriedly at Michael. She was tall and heavy-set, with a big, fleshy face. Combined with her feisty personality, in her youth she'd been a notorious gossip queen known throughout Pine Creek Town. No local shrew had been a match for her. By middle age, her temper had mellowed somewhat, but she was still plenty fiery and wasn't one to back down easily. Michael patted her shoulder reassuringly. "Don't worry, Mom. Be confident. You're the best mom in the world." "Really? Would I lie? Could an ordinary mother produce such an outstanding son?" Michael's shameless compliment visibly eased Margaret's nervousness. She figured a girl who could tolerate her son's level of cheekiness must have a high tolerance level. Surely, dealing with a future mother-in-law who just looked a little fierce wouldn't be a problem for her. After finishing his late-night snack, Michael waited a while, but Robert Thompson still hadn't returned. Tired from the past couple of days of travel, he decided to just head to his room and go to sleep. The next day, Michael Thompson didn't wake up until high noon. Green Valley was much hotter than Boston, yet his room didn't have air conditioning, only an old ceiling fan that creaked and groaned incessantly. He woke up to find his sheets completely soaked in sweat. Maybe it's time to think about buying a new house, he grumbled inwardly, bundling up the damp sheets and woven sleeping mat to take them out for washing. The Thompsons have made quite a bit of money, haven't they? Installing AC in his room was a non-starter. The house was self-built, and the electrical wiring was poorly planned back then. His room only had a single two-prong outlet by the headboard, nowhere near adequate for an air conditioner. Besides, the house itself was over 30 years old, built with a distinctly rustic, almost rural feel. Apart from the large courtyard, it had nothing going for it. What started as mere complaining began to solidify into a real idea as Michael thought it over. It had been almost 2 years since he'd been reborn into this time. In just over another year, Green Valley's old district was scheduled for large-scale demolition, though there wasn't even a whisper of this news circulating yet. The old district was situated slightly north of Green Valley City Center, technically within the Second Ring Road, an area that should have been prime real estate. However, due to poor early urban planning, it remained a strange mix of urban and rural development, a place where you could still spot old mud brick houses. Initially, the Green Valley government hadn't planned to build a South Valley Mall. The cost of demolishing the old district was deemed too high, putting the project on indefinite hold. Many residents in the old district had eagerly anticipated the demolition and potential compensation. But the wait dragged on, and eventually, the South Valley Mall was built instead. Once the new commercial area was established, everyone assumed the government had given up on the old district. Many who had been holding onto their properties hoping for a payout lost hope and sold. This led to a peculiar situation. Housing prices in the centrally located old district were now significantly lower than those in the suburban area around the South Valley Mall. Meanwhile, the Thompson family had indeed made a substantial amount of money from the mine over the past 2 years. Their assets had more than doubled. But Michael knew this windfall wouldn't last forever. Although their mine was rich in, or so rich it felt like they were literally rolling in it, enough to last beyond his own retirement, things would change. In another couple of years, the environmental slogan, "Lucid waters and lush mountains are invaluable assets," would gain traction, and the state would inevitably reclaim the mine. When that happened, the Thompsons would be like the former coal barons whose mines were nationalized, sitting on a pile of cash with no clear path forward. They would most likely return to their old trade as stone carvers. However, Michael didn't want the family to reinvest their money in precious stones. He knew that in a few years, the ripples from the nationwide anti-graft campaign, swatting flies and hitting tigers, would reach the stone carving industry, plunging it into a harsh downturn. Pine Creek Town, currently bustling with activity, would rapidly decline into a near-ghost town, the kind where you wouldn't see a soul on the streets after 9 p.m. Instead of investing in stones that will depreciate, we should invest in property, Michael reasoned. Right now, prices in the old district are probably around $4,000 or $5,000 per square meter, but by 2020, they'll be at least $30,000, probably more. Plus, with the demolition, the compensation payouts will be even higher. Michael had already mapped out a future for his extended family. Once they invested in property, his parents, aunts, and uncles could all become landlords and landladies. They could spend their days playing mahjong, fishing, and pursuing stone carving as a hobby, living comfortably for the rest of their lives. He wasn't greedy enough to think they could swallow the entire old district demolition windfall whole. He didn't know the exact figures, but he estimated the family's earnings were in the low tens of millions, not hundreds of millions. Honestly, that amount wouldn't buy that many properties, especially since quite a few people in the old district were stubbornly holding onto their houses, still hoping for the demolition. But it was enough. Michael's ambition wasn't grand. He just wanted to ensure his family's financial security. Trying to take too large a slice of the pie was beyond the Thompson family's capacity and would likely attract unwanted, troublesome attention. Getting a taste would be sufficient. Greed could easily lead to problems. Dad, let's buy a house, okay? Michael finally broached the subject with his father, Robert Thompson. Although it often seemed like his mother, Margaret Thompson, ran the household, a classic case of a strong wife and a more yielding husband. When it came to major decisions, Robert always had the final say. Besides, Michael suspected that if he brought this up with his mother first, he'd likely get an earful. So, he went straight to his father. Robert looked at him, surprised. You're only a freshman in college. Why are you thinking about this stuff? Then, a thought struck him, remembering his son mentioning bringing his girlfriend home today. His expression changed. You're not planning on getting married right out of college, are you? Dad, what are you talking about? It's not a wedding house for me. It's for the family. Michael quickly clarified, trying to persuade his father. He deftly took the cattail leaf fan from Robert's hand and began fanning him solicitously. Look, it's so hot these days, and the living room doesn't even have AC. Wouldn't it be much more comfortable to live in a big house in the city? Besides, property prices are rising everywhere. Buying now would be a good investment, too. Robert hesitated for a moment, then shook his head. Forget it. I've lived here my whole life, and it's comfortable enough. Besides, we need to keep an eye on things at the mine. Moving away would be inconvenient. He was thoroughly accustomed to life here. The neighbors were like family, their bond strong. The thought of leaving the compound where he'd spent half his life felt genuinely unsettling. Dad, this house wasn't built that well in the first place, Michael persisted, trying to find flaws. It's built on that rolling hillside. There isn't even a proper road up here. Cars have to park down on the main road. Look, the load-bearing walls are thin, the wiring is old. But Robert cut him off. He glanced at his eldest son. Your uncles and I built this house ourselves, back when we were young, he said. The Thompsons were very poor then. We couldn't afford workers. We carried every single brick and tile up that hill ourselves, using shoulder poles. This area used to be just mountainside. Your grandpa led us boys, clearing this whole flat space with hose. Even if we bought a new place 1,000 times, 10,000 times better than this, I'd still feel more comfortable right here. Robert paused, then let out a sudden sigh. If we move away, the family divides. The home, it breaks apart. That last sentence struck Michael silent. He had been ready with arguments, appeals to both reason and emotion, but now the words caught in his throat. He instantly understood his father's deepest fear. Right now, the entire extended Thompson clan lived together in the large compound. If Michael's immediate family bought a new house and moved out, it would signify a formal division of the household. Finjia. It had happened exactly like that in his previous life. After his grandparents passed away, his uncles had divided the family assets and gone their separate ways. The once lively, bustling extended family dissolved into mere relatives who only gathered for New Year celebration. In the old family home, only his mother, Margaret Thompson, a widow by then, had remained, stubbornly refusing to leave. Perhaps, Michael thought now, she had been holding onto the memory of the warmth and noise of those earlier days. Michael didn't want the family to split up either. Deep down, he cherished the current harmonious, lively atmosphere of everyone living together. Usually articulate, he now found himself at a loss for words, falling silent. The silence between father and son was broken when Margaret Thompson returned, laden with bags from her morning trip to buy chicken, duck, fish, and meat. She bustled into the courtyard, her voice ringing out. Oh, I'm exhausted. Uncle Ben Thompson, come give me a hand. Margaret Thompson was up bright and early today, heading to the market for fresh meat before dawn even broke. It was the day her son, Michael Thompson, was bringing his girlfriend home for dinner, an occasion she took very seriously. It was also why she'd spent half the night complaining to Robert Thompson, saying Michael hadn't given them enough notice. Now, they couldn't even order good seafood. After all, Pine Creek Town was just a small town. The market had limited seafood options, often not the freshest. Outside of New Year celebration, you had to pre-order anything decent. When Margaret Thompson came back inside, laden with bags, she saw Michael Thompson and asked in surprise, "How come you haven't left yet?" "No rush," Michael Thompson replied. He remembered Olivia Sullivan specifically telling him to come pick her up a bit later. So, he'd taken his time this morning, even planning to head to Green Valley after lunch. But Margaret Thompson was much more anxious. "Don't keep the girl waiting. Go get her now. Robert, give our boy the keys to your new car. You could drive your dad's car. Don't we still have the other one?" Robert Thompson muttered under his breath, but he didn't dare defy his formidable wife. Reluctantly, he handed the new car keys to Michael Thompson. The whole family knew how much Margaret Thompson cared about appearances. Their old car, driven for nearly 10 years, was just a beat-up old clunker. The new car, bought just this year and quite expensive, made a much better impression. Michael Thompson grinned as he took the keys. All right, Mom, Dad, I'm heading out. Be back soon. Michael Thompson drove onto the highway towards Green Valley. As soon as he got in the car, he sent Olivia Sullivan a message on Messenger. Heading over now, Olivia Sullivan replied instantly. I'm still at the mall. You could feel her nervousness through the string of exclamation points. Michael Thompson typed back, It's fine, just grab some smoked meat and drinks or something simple. If you make it too formal, my parents will feel awkward. Really? Definitely. Okay, well, I'll get a little something for Aunt Maggie too then. Pick me up at the mall. Sure. Michael Thompson put his phone away and focused on driving. It was the Thanksgiving holiday week, and the roads were packed with travelers. Traffic on the highway slowed to a crawl for a bit. The sun was bright, perfect weather for a drive. Michael Thompson drove with a smile, unbothered by the traffic jam. In fact, everything seemed a little more beautiful today. It's a good day, he couldn't help thinking. By the time he reached Green Valley, it was already past 11 in the morning. Michael Thompson had planned to park in the underground garage at South Valley Mall and go inside to find Olivia Sullivan. But as he pulled up to the mall entrance, he spotted her from a distance, laden with shopping bags, eagerly waiting. Beep beep. Michael Thompson drove over, stopped right in front of Olivia Sullivan, honked lightly, and rolled down the window. Olivia Sullivan's face lit up when she saw him, but she quickly pouted and complained, What took you so long? There was a hint of playful whining in her tone. Michael Thompson chuckled. Traffic was a bit heavy, Thanksgiving break. I'll let it slide this time. Pop the trunk. Michael Thompson got out and helped her put the bags in the trunk. Why'd you buy so much stuff? Olivia Sullivan blinked. Is it a lot? There must be a dozen cartons of cigarettes here. Are you trying to kill my dad? Don't say things like that. Olivia Sullivan protested, giving him a light punch on the arm. Once they were both in the car, Olivia Sullivan, sitting in the passenger seat, immediately took out a compact mirror to check her makeup. She didn't usually wear much makeup. She was naturally beautiful enough already. But for such an important day, she had carefully applied a light touch. Her cheeks had a cute pinkish hue. It was clear she was taking her first visit to the Thompson family as Michael's girlfriend seriously. She wore a new, relatively formal outfit, a white blouse with ruffles on the chest under a black jacket. Her hair was also meticulously styled, the ends curled into soft waves. Olivia Sullivan was applying lipstick when she noticed Michael Thompson looking at her lips. She put away her compact, cupped her chin with both hands, her eyes curving into beautiful crescents. You like what you see? I'm less concerned with how they look and more with how they taste. Olivia Sullivan. ? Michael Thompson leaned over from the driver's seat and pressed a quick kiss to her soft lips. She didn't even have time to react, freezing with her hands, cupping her face. When they parted, she was still stunned, her cheeks flushing bright red. Michael Thompson wiped a smudge of lipstick from his own mouth and declared confidently, Tasty. Strawberry flavored. In no way. Olivia Sullivan finally snapped out of it, tugging shyly at Michael Thompson's sleeve. She tilted her head up and said earnestly, You can't do that in front of your parents. Do what? Just sneak attacks like that. Like this. He stole another quick kiss. Olivia Sullivan, flustered and annoyed, sputtered, You. Another kiss. Stop it. One more kiss. Eventually, her protests faded, replaced only by the soft sounds of breathing after a lingering, passionate kiss. Ow! Michael Thompson yelped suddenly, covering his lip where she'd given him a small bite. Olivia Sullivan, face flushed, straightened her skirt with a mix of embarrassment and indignation. She shot Michael Thompson a glare. And keep your hands to yourself. On the drive back, Michael Thompson couldn't stop thinking about one thing. His plan to move in with Olivia needed to be fast-tracked. He'd been mulling it over for a while, but Olivia was quite conservative. A direct approach definitely wouldn't work. He needed to figure out a subtle way to convince her. What he didn't know was that, as he was thinking all this, Olivia Sullivan, beside him, was somehow listening in. Olivia Sullivan glanced sideways at Michael Thompson, who was focused on driving, feeling a little annoyed and embarrassed. What on earth was going through his head? That pig. Still, she thought, once you're dating, getting physical. It's pretty normal, right? The thought had barely formed before Olivia Sullivan shook her head vigorously. No, we're only freshmen. It's way too soon, no matter what. She silently resolved not to let Michael Thompson get his way this time. Probably, maybe, she could manage it. At least, she wouldn't make it easy for him. Just as Olivia Sullivan's internal debate reached peak intensity, Michael Thompson pulled the car over. She looked up and saw that he had stopped right in front of the diner near her place, the same one where they'd first met up alone. Why are we stopping here? Isn't it lunchtime? It's over an hour's drive back home. Let's grab a bite first, Michael Thompson said, unbuckling his seatbelt. The diner Michael Thompson brought Olivia Sullivan to wasn't far from her place. It was a small spot that sold meatball subs, along with things like deviled eggs and fried rice. The storefront wasn't much to look at, and the prices were really reasonable. You know, it feels like ages since we've been here, Olivia Sullivan remarked, quite cheerfully. The first time she came, she'd secretly found the place a bit shabby, but after coming a few more times with Michael Thompson, she'd grown fond of this kind of diner atmosphere. It was still the holiday today, so the small diner was quite busy. She watched Michael Thompson come back after ordering, rested her chin on her hand, and said with a beaming smile, "The first time we came here, it was winter, wasn't it?" "I think so. It was. We were sitting right here. You breathed on the window and drew a picture for me." Olivia Sullivan reminisced about her first private meeting with Michael Thompson, a smile spreading across her face. But she quickly shot Michael Thompson a mock-glaring look, puffing her cheeks slightly. "Back then, I really thought you were going to ask me out. You made it all romantic, but it turned out you were just after my Christmas savings." Michael Thompson couldn't help but grin. "Well, if I'd asked you out then, would you have said yes?" "How would you know if you didn't try?" little Miss Olivia declared, feigning haughtiness. But truthfully, even if Michael Thompson had chosen to ask her out back then, she wouldn't have agreed. Just like how, even as their feelings deepened later, they only officially started dating after graduating high school. She cherished the way Michael Thompson doted on her and could feel his respect and how much he valued her in their relationship. Because if Michael Thompson had insisted on dating in high school, she most likely would have caved. "It's such a shame, though," Olivia Sullivan sighed softly. "After I went home that day, I kept thinking, I wish you hadn't drawn it on the glass. Then I could have kept it forever. That was really the first gift you ever gave me." Olivia Sullivan lightly slapped the table, her face full of earnestness. It was really meaningful. She still had that girlish romantic streak, caring about milestones and sentimental gestures. It suddenly occurred to Michael Thompson that he'd never actually drawn a portrait of Olivia Sullivan. His interest piqued. He asked, "Wanting to make it up to you with one now?" "It's not the same. It was the first gift. That's what made it special. Drawing one now." "So you don't want one?" "I do." Olivia Sullivan couldn't help but admit defeat. Michael Thompson didn't have his proper art supplies with him. But turning his head, he saw the owner's young son, who looked about elementary school age, hunched over his homework on a stool. He went over, spoke with the owner, and paid a little money to buy the boy's sketchbook and pencil. He came back with the items, sharpened the pencil tip slightly on the edge of the table, opened the sketchbook, and began to draw. Since it was just a spontaneous idea, he planned to do a simple sketch for Olivia Sullivan. Wait, hold on. I'm not ready yet." Seeing Michael Thompson had already started drawing, Olivia Sullivan suddenly grew tense. She quickly smoothed her hair, placed her hands primly on her lap, and sat up straight, her small face tight with seriousness. Michael Thompson chuckled and gently flicked her forehead. "Don't be so nervous. It's just a casual sketch. Be natural." "Oh." She rubbed her forehead, looking slightly wronged, then started watching Michael Thompson draw. Sunlight streamed through the window, bathing the couple sitting near it. In that moment, the scene was picturesque. After a simple lunch at the diner, Michael Thompson drove Olivia Sullivan home from Green Valley. Along the way, Olivia sat in the passenger seat, gazing happily at the drawing on the sketch paper. It was just a rather simple pencil sketch, but Michael Thompson was a remarkably skilled artist. Even with only a pencil, he could render light, shadow, and contours with lifelike detail. Since it was spur of the moment, all he'd been able to borrow was a 2B pencil and a child's scratch pad, about as basic as it gets. Michael felt such a gift was a bit lacking, so he offered, "When we get back, how about I draw you a proper one?" "No need. This one is wonderful." Olivia Sullivan hugged the sketch paper, growing fonder the more she looked. "I think it looks better than the real me." "Really?" "Yes, really." "Well, maybe that's because, in my eyes, Miss Olivia is even prettier than you think you are," Michael said casually, keeping his eyes on the road. Olivia, however, couldn't help but tear her gaze from the drawing to him, noticing his profile, which didn't look like he was joking at all. A moment later, she lowered her head, clutching the drawing, feeling a mix of shyness and happiness. "Damn it, he got me again." Back at the Thompson house, Margaret Thompson was standing before the mirror, having donned the only fur coat she owned. She smoothed her hair, struck a pose, and asked her husband, "Robert, dear, you think this looks good on me?" It had to be said, although Margaret was plump, her weight had been stable for years, so the fur coat she'd bought a decade ago still fit. Robert Thompson sat by the door, smoking silently, watching his wife rummage through storage to dig out the fur. He sighed, "Honey, aren't you going a bit overboard? Won't you be hot? What's wrong? It's the first time our son's bringing his girlfriend home. Can't I dress up a bit? We can't have her thinking we're just some country bumpkins, can we?" Margaret retorted, rolling her eyes. Fair enough. But it was October. Green Valley was a southern city, almost coastal, and October days were still quite hot. They didn't have air conditioning except in the living room, and the small electric fan only blew warm air. Robert watched as his wife, after only a short while in the fur coat, started to bead with sweat on her forehead. He couldn't help but smirk, returning to his cigarette. He thought it was silly, but arguing with his wife now would inevitably end in his defeat. They'd been married for so many years, their son was grown, and he'd never won an argument. Truthfully, Margaret felt silly too. Being overweight and wearing something so thick in this heat had her panting. Silently, she took the fur coat off. Seeing this, Robert teased, "Weren't you going to dress up nicely? Why'd you take it off? It's too hot. What did I tell you?" "You were right. So your pocket money is halved next month." In the end, Margaret changed back into her usual clothes. After all, she still had to cook, and she'd be sweating buckets once she got busy. Just as she was about to go downstairs to check on the roast chicken simmering in the kitchen, she got a call from Michael. "Are you at the gate already?" Okay, I got it." "Well, bring her straight in. You have a key, don't you?" Margaret hung up, her heart starting to pound nervously. Her nerves frayed. She turned to see Robert still sitting there, completely relaxed and leisurely smoking. Her temper flared instantly. "Why are you still sitting there? They're here. Go meet them." "It's his own house. He knows the way," Robert grumbled. But he stubbed out his cigarette nonetheless and got up to go downstairs and greet them. At the gate of the Thompson family's large yard, Olivia Sullivan stood with gifts in both hands, the word nervous practically written across her face. Eyes closed, she kept muttering, "Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. My name is Olivia Sullivan. I'm Michael Thompson's girlfriend." "Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson." She was rehearsing her introduction from meeting Michael's parents. Michael saw her small hands, trembling with nervousness, and put an arm around her shoulder, patting it gently. "Don't be nervous. It's not like you haven't met my parents before. It's different." Olivia's voice trembled, almost sounding tearful. "Last time, I was just a friend. This time, I'm his girlfriend. What if your parents don't approve of me? I'm so short. What if they dislike me for being small? How could they? The amazing Miss Sullivan choosing me? That's a blessing earned from good deeds in my past life." "Michael Thompson, this is hardly the time for jokes," Olivia mumbled, slightly annoyed. Michael chuckled and patted her head. "Relax, my parents will definitely adore you. They'll probably treat you better than their own son in the future. Just act like you're their daughter coming home. Why be nervous meeting your own parents?" His reassurances helped a little. Olivia clenched her small fists, psyching herself up, then nodded at Michael with a determined look. Michael opened the yard gate and walked in first, with Olivia following closely behind. Just as they entered the yard, they saw Robert Thompson coming out of the house. "Dad, look who I brought home," Michael said with a smile, gently pulling Olivia, who was trying to hide behind him, forward by the arm. Olivia immediately bowed deeply, head lowered, and in her nervousness, subconsciously recalled Michael's words about treating his parents like her own. "Hi, Dad." The words hung in the air, followed by an instant silence. Robert, who had been wearing a kindly expression ready for a warm greeting, was completely thrown by Olivia's "Hi, Dad." He had no idea how to respond. Even Michael was stunned. "Ollie, I didn't know she was this eager. Calling him Dad already?" At first, Olivia didn't realize what she'd said wrong. She lifted the gifts she'd bought. I brought you some presents." It was only then, noticing the astonished looks from both Michael and his father, that she belatedly registered the bombshell she had just dropped. She immediately clapped a hand over her mouth. "Oh no, will Michael's dad think I'm too forward?" Olivia covered her face, so mortified she felt like she could dig a hole through the floor with her toes. She wanted to explain, but suddenly felt tongue-tied, unable to form words. She could only look pleadingly at Michael. Michael understood instantly and gave her a reassuring gesture. Olivia breathed a sigh of relief. Thank goodness her boyfriend was reliable. Just as that thought crossed her mind, Michael turned to his father with a perfectly serious expression. "Dad, why are you so surprised? A family title adjustment is inevitable, isn't it? She's just giving you a preview, letting you get used to it early." "Reliable, my foot." Robert Thompson quickly composed himself. After all, at his age, what hadn't he seen? He asked calmly, "My dear girl, your family's demands, they aren't too high, are they?" Olivia Sullivan. Question mark. Only after the words left his mouth did Robert Thompson realize how inappropriate they sounded. He gave an awkward chuckle and stepped aside. Come on in first. Have you two at lunch yet? We did, just grabbed a quick bite. Then have some more. Your mom thought you two were coming back for lunch. She made you a turkey dinner. Michael Thompson chatted idly with his father, Robert, as they went inside. Olivia Sullivan stood there blankly for a moment. She and her own father had never talked like this. In her memory, Dad had always been incredibly busy, with endless work and countless dinners to attend. The image of the two of them sitting down for a private chat was almost unimaginable. Meanwhile, her mother poured all her attention onto her older brother, basically ignoring anything to do with Olivia. Feeling a pang of disappointment, Olivia lowered her head, even though this wasn't her first time at Michael Thompson's house. But still, no matter how many times she saw it, she couldn't help but feel envious. You're already at the door, don't be shy now. Michael Thompson, who had already started inside with his father, noticed Olivia lingering. He walked back, took her hand, and gave her palm a gentle squeeze. Olivia shook her head. It's not shyness, it's just... She hesitated. Michael seemed to understand her reservations. He leaned close to her ear and whispered with a soft laugh. This'll be your Thompson family too, you know. The tips of her ears turned red. She nodded lightly, murmuring, Mom, look who's here. Michael called out as soon as he led Olivia into the house. Margaret Thompson, busy in the kitchen, heard him and came out wiping her hands on her apron, beaming. It's my son's first time bringing a girlfriend home. Little Sue. Olivia quickly bowed her head slightly in greeting. Hello, Aunt Maggie. Oh, hello. I bought you some gifts. Oh, honestly, child, just coming is enough. Why be so formal? It's not your first time here. Sit down first. Aunt Maggie will go wash some fruit for you. Michael Thompson, come help. Margaret was still cheerful, then pulled Michael into the kitchen. Why didn't you tell me your girlfriend was little Sue? She clearly remembered the girl Michael had brought home for dinner once before, and recalled her son mentioning how the girl's family favored sons, and gave her a hard time. Margaret had felt incredibly sorry for Olivia back then, especially since she herself had experienced the unfairness of a family that favored boys. But after Michael went off to Boston for college, Olivia hadn't visited the Thompson family again, and over time, Margaret had forgotten about it. She never expected that her eldest son's girlfriend would turn out to be her. Michael grinned. Mom, come on. If I wasn't interested, would I have brought her home for dinner back then? So you little rascal planned this all along, huh? Margaret poked Michael's forehead with her finger, then hesitated for a moment before nodding. Well, all right. The girl is certainly pretty, and she seems quite sweet. It's just her family. She worried slightly that her son might be taking on unnecessary baggage. It wasn't malicious for Margaret to think this way. It was only natural. Michael was her only son, dealing with difficult in-laws, or marrying someone obligated to excessively support her own family could be a real hardship. Michael smiled. Mom, don't worry yourself needlessly. What I told you back then was mostly exaggeration. Now you're lying to your own mother. Weren't you forbidding me from dating early back then? If I hadn't said that, you wouldn't be seeing me bring a daughter-in-law home today. Hey, listen to you. Making excuses now. Margaret pinched Michael's ear and gave her son a piece of her mind. Michael humbly accepted the criticism, but remained unrepentant. He didn't mention that Olivia was the granddaughter of Green Valley's wealthiest man. It wasn't intentional concealment, exactly. He just worried that if his family knew right away, they might feel awkward around Olivia. It would be better later, once Olivia had integrated into their big family, then he'd tell his parents. Margaret felt reassured. That's good then. I had a good feeling about little Sue. She just seems a bit soft-natured. You better not bully her, understand? Michael teased. Mom, that's not what you used to say. What did I used to say? You said she was too petite, might have trouble having kids later. You don't mind now. Margaret was momentarily speechless, then finally retorted. Aren't you just Mr. Smart Mouth? If you're so clever with your words, maybe you should stop talking from now on. Let me tell you, she deliberately changed the subject, putting on a stern face for a serious warning. Now that you have a girlfriend, you treat her with your whole heart, you hear? None of that playing around. If you start thinking you can have your fun on the side while keeping her waiting at home, don't blame your mother for cleaning house. Yes. Michael had no choice but to repeatedly promise. While Michael was being lectured by Margaret in the kitchen, Olivia sat somewhat anxiously in the living room. Have some tea. Robert Thompson kindly poured Olivia a cup. Don't be so formal. Treat this place like your own home. Thank you, Uncle. Not calling me Dad anymore. Olivia silently held her teacup, guiltily averting her gaze. Now she knew where Michael got his glib tongue from. And Michael had claimed his dad was a quiet, straightforward man. Just then, a head peeked around the doorway, looking towards Olivia in the living room, and smiled. Michael Thompson really did manage to lure you home. Emily Thompson. Seeing Emily, Olivia was instantly overjoyed. She had calmed down earlier, but with Michael gone, the nervousness had crept back. Seeing another familiar face from the Thompson family brought an immediate sense of relief. Emily Thompson came into the room and said to Robert Thompson, "Uncle Robert, I'll keep her company. We're friends. All right, you young people hang out together. Don't mind me." Robert Thompson waved his hand and got up to take a walk in the yard. Emily took Olivia's hand. "It's boring sitting here alone. Want to come hang out in my room?" "Is that okay?" "Why wouldn't it be?" Emily called towards the kitchen. "Michael, I'm borrowing your girlfriend for a bit." Michael's firm reply echoed back instantly from the kitchen. "Not borrowing. She's the only one I have." Emily looked at Olivia. "Your boyfriend's really stingy." Olivia's face flushed. "Don't mind him." "Emily, is Emma Thompson home?" "Yup. You missed that little rascal. MHM. It's been a while. That little imp is always talking about Big Brother's pretty older sister, too. Come on, I'll take you to see her." Emily excitedly pulled Olivia away. The Thompson family structure was such that Michael Thompson's family lived alongside his paternal uncle's family, while his second paternal uncle's family and Emily Thompson's family lived on the other side. As Emily Thompson led Olivia Sullivan towards her room to hang out, they passed through the ground floor living room, where George Thompson happened to be chatting with several guests. Olivia Sullivan offered a polite greeting. George Thompson, assuming she was just one of Emily's friends, nodded in acknowledgement without saying much more. Among the guests, a middle-aged man was talking effusively. "George, this is a really great opportunity. You're a well-known figure in Pine Creek Town now. If you could help out by contributing a couple of pieces, give your old buddy some face, we can promote this stone carving craft internationally. Imagine, this stuff will be like diamonds. Won't the prices just soar?" These guests were from the Stone Carvers Guild, and the middle-aged man speaking was Raymond Lewis, the current guild president. The Stone Carvers Guild wasn't an official government body, but it was a relatively well-known local non-governmental organization with close ties to the city government. They had come to the Thompson residence today because the guild was planning to organize a Huaxia craftsmanship festival overseas, and President Raymond Lewis had come personally to persuade George Thompson to participate. Originally, the guild had intended to invite the National Treasure Master Carver, Samuel Shaw. However, upon visiting the Shaw family, they learned that Samuel Shaw had developed Parkinson's disease, and his hands trembled so much he couldn't even hold a bowl steady, let alone a carving knife. Left with no choice, they had sought out George Thompson as the next best option. George Thompson was Samuel Shaw's apprentice and had thoroughly learned his master's skills. Although one couldn't quite say the student had surpassed the master, George had earned the title of National Master of Arts and Crafts through his own abilities, making him the most outstanding carver in all of Pine Creek Town. However, George Thompson had been busy managing the family's mining business for the past couple of years, which was far more profitable than crafting pieces himself. While he hadn't entirely neglected his craft, he wasn't keen on being asked to participate out of the blue. George was a wily old fox and wasn't easily swayed by a few flattering words. He knew the guild's usual tactics all too well. They'd paint a rosy picture now, making it sound like a glorious patriotic endeavor, but the so-called Huaxia Craftsmanship Festival could very well end up being a makeshift stall in some obscure corner of a small country, resembling a flea market. They'd snap a few photos of foreigners looking at the displays and call it a day. It wouldn't be surprising if the artisans supplying the works even had to chip in for maintenance fees. Mulling over his words, George prepared to decline. I'm quite busy, you see. Besides, holding a craftsmanship festival abroad. Would the authorities even approve it? It's not impossible for my family to contribute some funds, but I doubt other families would be willing. He didn't refuse outright, choosing his words carefully to pass the buck and gauge the other party's reaction. Raymond Lewis pointed at George Thompson, looked at the others, and said with a laugh, "See, I told you before we came how sharp George Thompson is. But this time, we genuinely want to do something significant. Don't worry about the funding. The guild has secured sponsorship from a major boss this time. And it's not just our stone carvers guild messing around on a small scale. Otherwise, why call it the Huaxia Craftsmanship Festival instead of the Huaxia Stone Carving Festival?" This event is spearheaded by the Cultural Bureau, involving many associations, the Calligraphy and Painting Association, the Sioux Embroidery Association, our Stone Carvers Guild. Loads of them collaborating. We'll be touring several EU countries and other nations too. This is all about promoting our national culture. The authorities definitely support it. It's practically a semi-official event. George Thompson was taken aback. This was rather unexpected. He quickly asked, "So, the big boss sponsoring this is Arthur Sullivan. Isn't he the top dog around Green Valley?" Raymond Lewis gave a thumbs up, grinning. Word is, Arthur Sullivan recently gained a son-in-law, or maybe a grandson-in-law, involved in the arts. Not entirely clear on the details, but lately, I've heard quite a few acquaintances have been invited to his home for meals, asked to help look out for a certain young man. The Sullivan family sponsoring this festival is likely to pave the way for their new in-law. Think about it. Anyone whose work gets selected for this has to be at least a provincial-level master, right? Everyone involved will owe the Sullivan family a favor. In the future, if this in-law wants to do something in the art circle, get his work judged for an award or something, won't it be much easier? It's all about connections and how the world works. Understanding dawned on George Thompson, and he felt a flicker of interest. Put that way, it did sound like a serious endeavor. He joked, "I wonder which lucky guy got so fortunate. Who knows? Definitely not one of my boys. My sons are such a useless bunch. Even if I offer them up to marry into someone's family, they probably wouldn't be wanted." Haha, fair enough. "Hey George, is that polite? You don't even have a single kid yourself, and I at least have a whole brood of boys." As the two men bantered, they didn't bother lowering their voices around the younger generation. Olivia Sullivan hadn't intended to eavesdrop, but hearing her grandfather's name mentioned unexpectedly made her pause and listen. What she heard left her slightly stunned. It sounded like they were discussing her and Michael Thompson. She hadn't realized her grandfather would act so quickly. It was only yesterday that she had brought Michael home to officially introduce him to the family, and yet her grandfather was already making moves. But she knew he was doing all this for her. Thinking this, Olivia felt a warmth spread through her heart. Emily Thompson leaned in, whispering playfully, "So, tell me, is that Michael fellow going to have to marry into your family?" Olivia Sullivan blushed crimson and whispered back defensively, "Of course not." While the two girls were whispering, George Thompson, though tempted, still looked troubled. "The festival starts next month? That's far too rushed. No, there's no way I can make the deadline." Raymond Lewis immediately grew anxious. "What about your previous works?" "My older pieces have either already won the awards they could, or they weren't good enough to win. There's no point sending the latter. Clueless foreigners won't know the difference anyway." "Absolutely not. That's not how it works. This is about showcasing our national heritage. We have to present the very best. Why would I send something I'm not satisfied with myself? That would be humiliating." George Thompson still had his principles. He shook his head firmly. "If that's your attitude, then don't ask me. Just go buy some junk from a random shop." Raymond Lewis started to get agitated, practically scratching his head in frustration. He had come to the Thompson family today specifically for George Thompson's prestigious title, National Master of Arts and Crafts. There were only a few hundred such masters in the entire country, and only a handful in Green Valley. Just then, Olivia Sullivan suddenly interjected, "Uncle, could Michael Thompson go? Michael Thompson is very talented too." Her words instantly drew the attention of the two men deep in conversation. Both George Thompson and Raymond Lewis turned to look at her, their expressions surprised. Olivia Sullivan didn't even know how she mustered the courage to say that. Perhaps, deep down, she had always believed her boyfriend was someone extraordinary. Or perhaps, when George Thompson and Raymond Lewis mentioned carvings, she subconsciously thought of the statue Michael Thompson had given her when he confessed his feelings. It was truly beautiful. So beautiful that she felt a little reluctant to keep it hidden at home, where only she could see it. George Thompson glanced at the young woman, somewhat surprised. Honestly, he hadn't even considered his own nephew. While Michael Thompson certainly possessed incredible talent for carving, perhaps even surpassing his own back in the day, hadn't his nephew spent the last 2 years studying traditional Chinese painting instead. When Michael had decided to pursue painting, there had actually been significant opposition within the Thompson family. After all, with Michael's talent in carving, he was a shoo-in to become a national-level master within the next decade, potentially even reaching the legendary status of someone like Samuel Shaw. However, Howard Banks, a master painter revered as a national treasure, had personally visited the Thompson family and persuaded them. Studying painting offered guaranteed admission to university, and according to Master Banks, Michael's talent in painting was no less than his talent for carving. Of course, the most crucial factor was that Michael himself wanted to study painting. Faced with this, the Thompson family had little choice but to agree. Although George Thompson felt it was a pity, he respected the boy's decision. He had assumed that Michael must have neglected his carving skills over the past 2 years. Even if Michael hadn't completely abandoned it, dividing his attention with painting. A person's energy is always limited, meant reaching the standard of a provincial master in just 2 years, no matter how talented, seemed unrealistic. The works selected for this overseas exhibition needed to be at least provincial-level master craftsman quality. Raymond Lewis was even more direct. "Young lady, this isn't child's play. I've heard the Thompson boy is quite capable, but didn't he switch to painting?" "He's amazing at carving, too," Olivia insisted. "The bar is set very high this time. How many years has Michael Thompson even been learning? He surely hasn't met the standard to be considered a master yet, has he? Then, could you perhaps look at Michael Thompson's work first?" Raymond Lewis glanced at George Thompson, who pondered for a moment before saying, "Let's take a look." He was also curious about how Michael's carving skills had fared over the past 2 years. Olivia Sullivan quickly took out her phone and scrolled through her photo album for a while. She had taken many pictures of the statue Michael had given her. "This is it." Olivia showed the photo to the two elders. As their eyes fell upon the image, both men froze, their gazes fixed. For a moment, the room fell silent. Seeing no one speak, Olivia's heart began to pound, and she asked anxiously, "Is it not good?" Only when she spoke did the others seem to snap out of their daze. "Stone like jade. Is this dragon egg stone? This large?" Raymond Lewis couldn't help but exclaim. George Thompson's eyes seemed distant for a moment before he asked in disbelief, "Are you certain this is Michael Thompson's work?" Raymond Lewis quickly followed up, "Is this real? It's not just a veneer, is it? Where's this piece? Do you have clearer photos?" The barrage of questions left Olivia completely bewildered. George Thompson came to his senses and grumbled, "Old Raymond, what's the rush? Don't scare the young lady." "How can I not be rushed? I've been in this business my whole life, and I've never seen a dragon egg stone this big, of this quality." Raymond Lewis looked almost numb, muttering, "How much would this even be worth? Is it very valuable?" Olivia Sullivan blinked, not quite understanding. George Thompson, however, wasn't concerned about the value right now. He was far more interested in the craftsmanship of the piece itself. Did Michael Thompson really carve this? Olivia Sullivan nodded quickly. "This skill, at least in figure carving, he's already on par with me, if not better," George Thompson murmured, still feeling as if he were dreaming. Although he specialized in landscapes, flowers, and birds, not figures, he was a national-level master who had been immersed in the craft for decades. How long had his nephew been learning? In the past 2 years, all he heard from Michael's mother were reports of him winning various painting awards elsewhere, indicating he had put significant effort into his painting. Yet, even while dividing his focus, Michael had managed to reach a master's threshold in carving. What kind of monstrous talent was this? George Thompson was once again struck by Michael Thompson's unnatural giftedness. George Thompson quickly asked, "Where is this stone carving now?" "At my place." "Your place? Michael Thompson gave it to you?" "Oh, yes." George Thompson's face instantly turned pale green. He held back for a long moment before finally forcing out a curse. That prodigal son. He couldn't sit still any longer. "Old Raymond, we'll talk later. I need to find my grandnephew first." Raymond Lewis immediately objected, getting up to follow. "Then I definitely have to come see this genius of your family, too." Meanwhile, Michael Thompson finished washing the fruit and carried the basket out, only to find the living room empty. "Huh, where did my very large girlfriend go?" He guessed Olivia had been dragged off by Emily Thompson and was about to go next door to retrieve his girlfriend. But just as he placed the fruit basket in the living room, before he could even step out, the front door was flung open, and his second uncle burst in with several people in tow. "Michael, come here." George Thompson spotted Michael Thompson and immediately beckoned him over. "Second uncle, what's up?" Michael Thompson saw Olivia Sullivan and Emily Thompson trailing behind them, feeling somewhat confused. Still, he walked over. George Thompson directly took Olivia Sullivan's phone and showed him the picture. "This? Did you carve this?" Michael Thompson looked closer. The photo clearly showed the stone statue he had given Olivia Sullivan upon graduating high school. He instantly understood and nodded calmly. "Yes, I carved it." George Thompson couldn't help asking, "When did you learn this skill? Aren't you studying traditional Chinese painting in Boston?" "I never stopped carving, just kept self-studying." "Self-studying can reach this level. Why else would they call me a genius?" Michael Thompson boasted without hesitation, instantly leaving George Thompson speechless. Beside them, Raymond Lewis interjected impatiently. "Is this the time for that? Is it solid stone or veneer? Does dragon egg stone really come this large? If this is solid stone, it must be worth a 7-figure amount." "That expensive?" The little money lover Emily Thompson was stunned when she heard the price. She started counting on her fingers, trying to figure out how many zeros were in a seven-figure amount, her mind buzzing. She had initially thought her cousin Michael had landed himself a rich girlfriend, but she hadn't expected Michael to be willing to spend so lavishly just to woo Olivia. Damn, must be nice being loaded. Emily Thompson instantly decided she needed to be much nicer to her cousin from now on. She had to hold tight to this golden thigh and let Michael Thompson make her rich in the future. Olivia Sullivan gasped, covering her mouth in astonishment. Back then, she had accepted Michael Thompson's gift with pure delight, caring only that it was a piece Michael Thompson had carved for her himself. She never imagined it would be so valuable. Michael Thompson, however, just pursed his lips, somewhat dismissive. A seven-figure amount. In his past life, this stone had sold for over $100 million. But that was after another national-level master from the Hudson River School, one specializing in figure sculpture, had acquired it and carved it into an open-work piece titled Biblical Sacrifice, which won the country's highest Hunter Flowers Award for the arts. That price reflected not just the massive dragon egg stone itself, but also its immense artistic value. Michael Thompson, well, he wasn't famous, so he certainly couldn't sell it for that much. Of course, he had no intention of selling it anyway. George Thompson couldn't help but ask, "You really gave it away?" Michael Thompson nodded readily, grinning. "Gave it to my girlfriend." "You really went all out." George Thompson was speechless. "The Thompson family probably hasn't earned in the last 2 years what you just gave away." "Huh, the cost wasn't high. The raw stone was being sold as scrap by someone else. You could say I got lucky and snagged a bargain. Picked it up from a mine in Pine Creek Town." "Yeah. How much?" "Around $2 million, maybe." "Where did you get that kind of money?" "She gave it to me." Michael Thompson pointed at Olivia Sullivan, smiling. "So, second uncle, don't even think about this stone. It was hers to begin with. I just spent some time carving it for her. I'm not thinking about it. Even if it were yours, it wouldn't have anything to do with me." George Thompson caught the implication in his nephew's words and waved his hand dismissively. "I'm more interested in how your craftsmanship has reached this level in just 2 years. I'd like to see this stone carving." Michael Thompson shrugged. "Then you'll have to ask Olivia. After all, she's the owner of the carving now." George Thompson and Raymond Lewis immediately turned their gazes back to Olivia Sullivan. Olivia instantly felt self-conscious. I'll do whatever Michael says." Michael Thompson quickly intervened. "Let's talk about it after the turkey dinner, second uncle. I brought my girlfriend here today to meet my parents. This kind of small matter can wait." "This kind of small matter?" George Thompson's lip twitched. "Michael, why did you say I paid for it?" After seeing off his second uncle and the others, Olivia Sullivan took Michael Thompson's hand and whispered close to his ear. Michael Thompson gently put an arm around her and explained, "Some things are better made clear, even with close relatives. My second uncle wouldn't say anything, but my second aunt, well, she tends to overthink things and likes to take advantage. Anyway, it's my gift to you, and no one can take it away." Olivia thought about the scheming and backstabbing in her own family, then about the warm Thompson family, feeling a pang of sadness. "Does stuff like that happen in your family too?" "Haha, every family's like that. But mine is pretty good, relatively speaking. My Aunt Maggie is also very kind to us younger ones. Everyone has flaws, right? As family, we accept them. Living together means being tolerant of each other," Michael Thompson said, sharing snippets of his family life. Olivia curled up in his arms, resting her head on his shoulder, and sniffled slightly. "Am I causing trouble for you?" "When it comes to Olivia, I can tolerate anything forever," Michael Thompson said with a smile. Olivia couldn't help but break into a sweet smile. "Then you're definitely going to have a lot of trouble in the future. Bring on a little more trouble, I don't mind. I'm happy to." While the two were whispering secrets to each other in the living room, Margaret Thompson and Robert Thompson were peeking out from the kitchen doorway, watching them. Margaret Thompson sighed wistfully. "Were we like that back in our day? I was never as shameless as your son. If you had been more proactive, our eldest son would be 3 years older now." Robert Thompson selectively ignored his wife's complaint. Margaret Thompson suddenly remembered something. "Hey, did you buy the diapers and formula I asked you to get? Aren't you rushing things a bit?" "Rushing? Look at them. I bet we'll need them within 2 years." Robert Thompson wanted to argue, but looking at the affectionate young couple in the living room, he felt his wife might have a point. After all, a 7-figure amount betrothal gift has been given. Who spends that much marrying someone's daughter? It'll be hard not to end up married. Clearly, he had also heard about the 7-figure stone carving Michael Thompson had given Olivia Sullivan. Finally, Robert Thompson nodded. "About the formula and stuff, let's wait until my older brother gets back from abroad at the end of the year. Have him bring some foreign brands back. Margaret Thompson nodded too. I think so too. The old couple quietly retracted their heads back into the kitchen, leaving the living room space to the young people. For dinner that evening, Margaret Thompson prepared a huge feast, so much food that the table was almost overflowing. Tonight, it was just the three of them and Olivia Sullivan eating together, as the main purpose was to introduce Olivia to his parents. Michael Thompson originally wanted to sit next to Olivia, but Margaret Thompson immediately shooed him over to sit with his dad, while she took Olivia's hand and started chatting nonstop. Olivia, come try this chicken. It's our own free-range chicken, very healthy. Thank you, Aunt Daisy. What does your family do? Aunt Daisy, my family is in business. We sell small consumer goods to Central America. Ah, foreign trade. Aunt Daisy knows about that. That's good, that makes money. In reality, Margaret Thompson had never left this little patch of land in Green Valley her whole life and didn't know squat about foreign trade. But she put on a knowledgeable air, nodding seriously in agreement. Michael Thompson almost died laughing. Margaret Thompson asked again, so how many people are in your family? Olivia, like a well-behaved child, answered honestly, my grandfather had 5 children. My dad is the second oldest. And in my family, my parents are divorced. Dad's busy with business, so I live with my grandfather. Margaret Thompson felt a bit awkward. Michael Thompson, sitting nearby, interjected to smooth things over. Mom, let her eat first. Right, eat first, eat first. Margaret Thompson quickly piled food onto Olivia's plate, incredibly enthusiastic. Eat more here at Aunt Daisy's. Look how skinny you are, dearie, you need to grow more. Olivia, who had just picked up her chopsticks and bowl, froze at the words. Michael Thompson's expression turned peculiar. He wanted to laugh but didn't dare, forcing himself to hold it in. Mom, you're so good with words. Please don't say any more next time. After dinner, Michael Thompson saw his mom was still eager to pull Olivia aside and ask her all sorts of questions. Worried Olivia would feel uncomfortable, he used the excuse of going for a walk and quickly whisked Olivia away from the house. Once outside, they walked hand in hand down the street. Olivia let out a sigh of relief. Phew, we finally made it out. Michael Thompson asked, did you feel uncomfortable at my place? Olivia quickly shook her head, saying a little embarrassed, no, it's just. Aunt Daisy was too enthusiastic. I couldn't eat that much. Haha, that's just how my mom is. Don't force yourself to eat if you can't manage it in the future, all right? Just say so directly. But she went to all that trouble just for me. There'll be plenty more opportunities like this in the future. Michael Thompson had planned to drive Olivia Sullivan home, but tonight, Olivia didn't seem quite ready to leave. First, she claimed she was too full from dinner and wanted to walk it off. Then, she said she felt a little dizzy and worried about getting carsick. Truthfully, she just wanted to spend a little more time with Michael Thompson. Michael naturally saw through her little act, but was happy to spend more time with his girlfriend. They didn't walk far, however, before Olivia started to tire. She had dressed up meticulously for her visit to the Thompson family today, and her new leather boots were pinching. Before long, a blister had formed on her left little toe. Still not going back, even like this? Michael helped her sit down on a public bench under a streetlight, knelt to take off her boot, and gently rubbed her foot before looking up at her. Olivia shook her head stubbornly. Michael chuckled. Then you might as well just stay here tonight. No, Grandpa will lecture me. Olivia glanced warily at Michael, pouting. Besides, there's a bad guy here. All right then, I'll be bad all the way. Michael feigned annoyance, wrapping his arms around Olivia's waist. Olivia giggled, playfully pushing him away before leaning in to plant a quick kiss on his lips. She cupped his face with her small hands. Okay, that's enough. No more misbehaving. Seeing he still looked a little eager, she quickly grabbed his hand, changing the subject. Oh, right. That Chinese cultural exhibition today. Are you going to participate? Michael was actually quite interested, but after a moment's thought, he shook his head. I can't. Never mind the skill, I don't have the qualifications. But didn't my grandpa sponsor it? Olivia wasn't ready to give up. I'll ask Grandpa to figure something out. Michael watched her look of quiet determination, gently pinched her nose, and smiled. Why are you so insistent? I want everyone to know how amazing my boyfriend is. Haha, your boyfriend is already amazing, Michael acknowledged cheekily, but still declined with a smile. Let's forget it. Mainly, I need to prepare for the National Youth Calligraphy and Painting Awards soon, so I don't have time to work on agate carving. Plus, I don't have any suitable material on hand right now. Olivia blinked. But isn't there one ready-made? Michael frowned slightly. Are you talking about the one I gave you? Michael smiled. That's yours now. You get to decide what happens to it. Olivia thought for a moment, seemingly lost in thought, then suddenly asked Michael, Michael, what if? What if you become a really famous artist someday? Would the carving you gave me become famous too? You know, like Da Vinci's Mona Lisa? You really think that highly of me, huh? Of course. You're my boyfriend, after all. Olivia hugged Michael's arm tightly, her lips pursed in a small, proud pout, her face brimming with happiness. The next morning, Michael Thompson was dragged out of bed bright and early by his Uncle George, who wanted to see the sculpture. Michael had gotten home late the previous night after dropping Olivia off, and had planned to sleep in. Being woken up so early left him still feeling groggy. After washing up and grabbing a quick breakfast, he went out to the courtyard. He saw his Uncle George sitting under the grapevine trellis, chatting with Raymond Lewis. "Well, Mr. Lewis, you're here early," Michael greeted him casually. He knew Raymond Lewis fairly well. Raymond Lewis had a good relationship with the Thompson family. The older man meant well, he just cared a lot about his reputation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken on the presidency of the Stonecarvers Guild. The guild was just a private organization. Being president didn't come with a government salary. After all, it wasn't a civil service system. To many, it seemed like a thankless job. Otherwise, why wouldn't people like Samuel Shaw or George Thompson compete for the position? Raymond Lewis was nearly 60 and hadn't even managed to be recognized as a provincial master craftsman. Raymond, slightly impatient, looked at Michael slowly stretching in the courtyard. "For heaven's sake, kid, let's get going. We're waiting for you. What's the rush? Mr. Lewis, have you had breakfast? Want to grab a bite here? I'll buy you breakfast on the way, all right?" Raymond said resignedly. "You're really not worried at all, are you? Do you realize what a huge opportunity this could be for you?" "What kind of opportunity? Are they going to give me a national master certification?" Michael joked. Raymond rolled his eyes. "In your dreams. It's not your turn yet, based on seniority. But when the province evaluates master craftsmen this year, the guild might consider giving you a nomination slot. It shouldn't be too hard for your family to secure a spot, right?" As he said this, his eyes drifted towards George Thompson. Michael knew how these things worked. Becoming a master craftsman wasn't simple. Skill was one thing, but seniority, connections, and knowing who was pulling strings behind the scenes mattered just as much. The whole process of building connections and currying favor involved a lot of effort. Michael disliked that whole system, but it was hard to avoid in society. In this, he took after his father. Robert Thompson had been in the trade for over 30 years, but hadn't received the provincial master craftsman title either. Partly, Robert simply didn't have exceptional talent. His skills after 30 years were just average, and he'd failed in previous attempts. But also, Robert's honest, unassuming personality made him terrible at networking, and he was unwilling to spend the necessary money. George Thompson didn't answer directly, just smiled. Even Robert hasn't gotten the provincial title yet. But if Michael really managed it, he'd probably be the youngest provincial master craftsman in our province, wouldn't he? Raymond Lewis immediately understood. The youngest provincial master craftsman. That was an excellent selling point, wasn't it? His mind started racing. If they could build up Michael Thompson's reputation, it would be great publicity for the Green River Stonecarvers Guild, and even for their hometown of Pine Creek Town. But first things first, they needed to see Michael Thompson's work for themselves. After all, they had only seen photos. Actually, George Thompson and Raymond Lewis had wanted to see it yesterday, but the sculpture was kept in Olivia Sullivan's apartment near the school district. Since Olivia had gone off to university 2 years ago, the apartment hadn't been lived in or cleaned, so they had postponed until today. By the time Michael, George, and Raymond arrived at the apartment building outside Oakwood High School, Olivia had already driven over from Green Valley. "You already gave me the key, you know? You didn't have to come." Michael teased her from behind as Olivia unlocked the door. "Or did you miss me after just one night apart? If that's the case, you should have just stayed at my place yesterday." Olivia blushed and ignored Michael's banter, pushing the door open. She had arranged for cleaners the previous night, so the apartment was spotless, free of dust. As George Thompson and Raymond Lewis stepped inside, Raymond's exclamation quickly followed. "There really is a dragon egg stone this big?" In the room, the curtains were drawn. Despite it being daytime, the lights were on. Under the illumination, a statue stood in the center of the living room. The grayish-brown stone covering had been partially chipped away, revealing a jade-like, lustrous texture underneath. The image of a blissful woman holding a child was strikingly lifelike. George Thompson leaned in, scrutinizing it closely. The more he looked, the more astounded he became. The carving showed no hint of awkwardness. The lines were smooth, the contours distinct. This craftsmanship clearly demonstrated the sculptor's solid foundational skills. Yet, he found it hard to imagine his nephew had carved this. Michael Thompson had initially learned stone carving from George's fourth brother, and later, George himself had taught him. but his brother specialized mainly in calligraphy engraving. Apart from that, both he and George had learned from the same master, Samuel Shaw. Samuel Shaw's forte was his signature rolling hills landscape and bird and flower style, passed down through his lineage. His figure carving, however, was merely average, not bad, but simply incomparable to his landscape and floral works. George Thompson was the same. If he carved figures, it would typically be auspicious symbols like the god of longevity. But that style was entirely different from the massive dragon eggstone statue before him. The statue Michael Thompson had given Olivia Sullivan leaned more towards Western realism, striving for deceptive lifelikeness. So, who had Michael Thompson learn this from? Could Master Howard Banks possibly know this style too? Surely, he couldn't have taught himself. George Thompson felt bewildered. But even if it were just about realism, that wouldn't be the main point. What truly struck him was the emotion conveyed by the piece. Even a complete layman, standing before this statue and simply looking, could perceive the overflowing happiness of the woman depicted, even feel the tenderness embedded within, a genuine emotional resonance. This was the empathy that great works of art strive for. This is absolutely master-level work, George Thompson concluded inwardly, unable to suppress a sigh of admiration. But immediately following that, his expression turned fervent, a surge of excitement rising within him. This was a child of his Thompson family, a master of arts and crafts who wasn't even 20 yet, just starting university. An unprecedented genius had emerged from his own family. Just how amazing was the fortune blessing their family cemetery? Was a true dragon rising among them? Perhaps the next master hailed as a national treasure would come from their own house. George Thompson had initially felt Michael Thompson was too young, but now he made a crucial decision. During this year's provincial selection for Masters of Arts and Crafts, he absolutely had to nominate his own nephew. Unlike George Thompson, who focused on the statue's carving technique, Raymond Lewis was more interested in the material itself. The old man crouched down, holding a small flashlight, pressing it against the stone occasionally to examine the texture of the inner material. The more he looked, the more stunned he became, muttering, "So dragon eggstones this large actually exist. And the quality of this dragon jade core. No cracks, no impurities. Absolutely top tier. Couldn't this qualify for a Guinness World Record?" He found it incredible. What insane luck had this Thompson kid stumbled upon to find such a piece? Even a low seven-figure estimate felt conservative. The first digit would surely have to start with a 4 or higher. This kind of luck was far rarer than winning the lottery. Raymond Lewis could already imagine the sensation this dragon eggstone would cause if exhibited overseas. After they finished viewing it, both George Thompson and Raymond Lewis were bursting with questions for Michael Thompson. Raymond Lewis, being impatient, spoke first. "Michael Thompson, does this piece have a name?" Michael Thompson thought for a moment. "Future." "What?" "The name. This piece is called Future." "Future?" Raymond Lewis mumbled. "What kind of name is that?" Michael Thompson smiled, but didn't explain. Beside him, however, Olivia Sullivan blushed, lowering her head shyly. She understood, because this statue was the future Michael Thompson had promised her. Their future together. She would be a happy mother, a happy wife. After murmuring a bit, Raymond Lewis didn't dwell on the name. It was Michael Thompson's work, he could call it whatever he liked. But now that Olivia Sullivan had agreed to let the Stone Carvers Guild take the piece for the overseas exhibition, Raymond Lewis felt hesitant. "Let me ask first, are you sure you want to exhibit this piece?" Raymond Lewis looked at Olivia Sullivan, smiling wryly. "There's something I need to tell you beforehand. Usually, for high-value crafts taken to overseas exhibitions, the organizers arrange insurance. The insurance costs and event funds are covered by sponsors. But this one, honestly, it's too valuable. The insurance premium will far exceed expectations. I'm not sure if Arthur Sullivan's side will cover the reimbursement. Our guild definitely doesn't have the funds to cover it for you." Raymond Lewis desperately wanted to exhibit this artwork, but he had to state the facts. Although protective measures would certainly be meticulous throughout the journey, even a slight knock or bump could cause a crack, drastically reducing its value. This international exhibition would visit over a dozen countries. What if something happened? Seeing how young Olivia Sullivan was, Raymond Lewis guessed she was just a young woman, likely unable to suddenly produce the tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands needed for the premium. He felt a pang of regret. Just as he thought the matter would fizzle out, Olivia Sullivan, unexpectedly, nodded without hesitation. "That's fine." Raymond Lewis was taken aback, thinking he hadn't been clear. He quickly added, "You mean you don't want insurance? Let me tell you, this is much more expensive than you think. Even though the carver isn't famous, the material alone is worth 7 figures. If it gets damaged on the road, its value could lose a zero, you know. Olivia Sullivan glanced at him, slightly puzzled. Of course, we'll get insurance. The premium isn't cheap either. Likely tens of thousands, maybe even over 100,000. It's okay. If my grandfather knows it's Michael Thompson's work, he'll definitely agree. Even if your grandfather agrees. Wait a minute, what's your surname again? Raymond Lewis had initially been somewhat dismissive, thinking the young woman was bluffing. But then he suddenly recalled Michael Thompson's girlfriend. Wasn't her surname Sullivan? And wasn't the biggest sponsor this time the Sullivan family, the wealthiest in Green Valley? Coincidentally, he'd heard old Mr. Arthur Sullivan had found an artist grandson-in-law. And coincidentally again, this Thompson kid from the Thompson family possessed truly monstrous talent in carving. In that instant, Raymond Lewis's mind raced. The scattered clues he hadn't paid much attention to suddenly connected into a complete picture. A conclusion formed in his mind, one he found hard to believe. Could the grandson-in-law of Arthur Sullivan, the talk of the city recently, actually be this Thompson kid? No way. Just as Raymond Lewis struggled with disbelief, Olivia Sullivan spoke, a little embarrassed. My grandfather is the sponsor, so I think it should be all right. Holy crap, it really was him. Instantly, the way Raymond Lewis looked at Michael Thompson changed entirely. He had initially thought Michael was just a prodigal son, spending a fortune to win a beauty smile. But was this guy actually playing a much, much bigger game? Michael Thompson couldn't shake the feeling that Raymond Lewis was looking at him strangely, and it left him baffled. No matter how hard he racked his brain, he couldn't possibly guess what was going through Raymond Lewis's mind. Putting the statue up for exhibition had been Olivia Sullivan's decision, and naturally, Michael Thompson had no objections. The follow-up arrangements were mostly handled by the Stonecarvers Guild, saving them the trouble. Once that matter was settled, Michael Thompson spent his time painting at home. The Thanksgiving break wasn't long, only 7 days in total, and it flew by quickly. To help Olivia Sullivan better integrate into his family, Michael Thompson came up with an excuse, saying he wanted to paint a proper portrait of her, and invited Olivia to model for him at his house. Little Olivia, having already met his parents, felt a bit shy about going over again. Initially, she made excuses, but Michael Thompson would just drive into the city to pick her up. Each time, she somehow ended up dazedly following him back home. After a few more visits to the Thompson residence, she gradually relaxed. She didn't even need Michael Thompson to fetch her anymore. She started taking her family's car to Pine Creek Town to find him herself each day. The main reason was that staying with the Thompsons genuinely felt more comfortable than being at her own home. Uncle Robert and Aunt Maggie were wonderful people and treated her very kindly. Time slipped by unnoticed, and soon it was the day before they had to return to school. Michael Thompson sat on a low stool in the yard, an easel set up before him, an oil paintbrush in hand. Under the grapevine trellis nearby, Olivia Sullivan held his younger cousin, discussing with Emily Thompson what kind of ribbon would look cutest on the little one. The younger cousin, like a living doll, giggled happily despite being fussed over by the two girls. Near the yard wall, Robert Thompson stood with a cigarette dangling from his lips, meticulously and skillfully mending a fishing net. While carving was his livelihood, fishing had always been the sole hobby of this honest, quiet father. Margaret Thompson sat with several of Michael's aunts and uncles, knitting sweaters. As autumn approached each year, knitting and chatting became the favorite pastime for the women of the Thompson family. Even now, Michael still received hand-knitted sweaters from his mom every year, a bit rustic and unfashionable, perhaps, but undeniably warm. Watching this harmonious family scene, a smile unconsciously touched Michael Thompson's lips. He wished he could capture this moment forever. The softest part of his heart was stirred, and the inspiration that had eluded him began to crystallize, becoming clear and tangible. Simply put, inspiration struck. He lifted his brush, the tip meeting the canvas with a soft swish. Lines and colors, contours and shadows. His mind seemed to work without conscious thought, every stroke landing perfectly on the canvas, everything flowing with natural grace. Congratulations, host. You have unlocked painting skill, master level. You have obtained the master level skill, emotive touch, painting. Emotive touch. Your works are imbued with your thoughts. Anyone who views your creations can feel the emotions you've poured into them. Note 1. This skill cannot be upgraded. Note 2. Currently, only your sculpture and painting works can achieve this skill's effect. As time passed from noon to dusk, Michael Thompson laid down the final stroke on his canvas. He looked up at the yard, only to find it empty now. The sun was setting behind the low hills in the distance, painting half the sky in fiery, crimson clouds. The early autumn evening still held a touch of lingering heat. Yet, within Michael Thompson's heart, there was a profound sense of release and exhilaration. His painting skills had long accumulated the foundation needed to break through to the master level. He had merely lacked the right trigger, that spark of insight. Today, he had finally found his spark. Michael Thompson gazed at his painting, at the yard depicted within it, at the people immortalized there. His eyes softened. He reached out, gently stroking the still damp canvas, murmuring softly, "The Thompsons." Just as he stood there admiring his work, Olivia Sullivan poked her head out of the main house door. Holding a pair of chopsticks, nibbling on one end, she scanned the yard before spotting him. "Michael Thompson," she called out. "Aunt Maggie says it's time for dinner. Come on in. Aunt Maggie made fish stew tonight. It's delicious." Evidently, the little glutton had already snuck a taste. Back at her own home, Olivia was always perfectly behaved and would never dare sneak food from the kitchen before it was served. But here at Michael's house, her inhibitions had loosened, revealing an even more endearing side to her personality. Hearing Olivia's call, Michael snapped back to reality. He smiled and waved her over. "Come take a look. You finished it." Olivia's face lit up with a delighted smile, and she hurried over eagerly. She knew Michael had been struggling with a creative block the past few days, starting several paintings only to discard them half-finished, seemingly unsatisfied. Olivia had thought it was a pity. She found them all quite beautiful. But today, Michael's demeanor was clearly different. It seemed he had finally created something he was happy with. Michael stepped aside as Olivia approached, allowing her a clear view of the entire painting. The moment Olivia saw it, she froze. In the painting was a warm, loving family scene, and she was in it. The master-level emotive touch infused the artwork with the creator's feelings, and what Michael Thompson cherished most in his heart was his family. And this family, his family, included Olivia Sullivan. This was his deepest emotion, making the affection for the family in the painting almost palpable, leaping off the canvas. "It's so beautiful." Though Olivia didn't consider herself an art connoisseur, looking at this painting made her nose tingle, and tears welled up in her pretty eyes. She thought of her own home, the family she had grown up with. Although the Sullivan family was larger than the Thompsons, Olivia had often felt lonely growing up. Her grandfather treated her well, but missed her. Arthur Sullivan was a busy man and couldn't always be there for her. So, most of the time, she was alone. But now, in this painting, it was as if she saw another family for herself. Another, warmer, more loving family. Michael wrapped an arm around her waist, leaning close to whisper in her ear with a smile, "I think you belong in this family, too." In his eyes, Olivia was already part of his family. "After we graduate college," he said, finally voicing the words he'd wanted to say for so long. "Let's get married?" Tears instantly streamed down Olivia's face. She covered her face with her hands, alternating between crying and laughing. "Who does things like this?" Her voice was choked with emotion. "Proposing without even a ring. Just proposing out of the blue like that. It's too sudden. You're so sly." Michael asked gently, "Is that a no?" "Yes." She clung tightly to his back, burying her face in his chest, her voice fading to a whisper. "Yes, I will." Perhaps many years later, long after she was married, Olivia Sullivan would sometimes recall that afternoon. The fish stew had been delicious that day. The sunlight had been warm. On the last day of Thanksgiving break, Olivia Sullivan had packed her bags early and came over to Michael Thompson's house to wait for him so they could leave together. Sitting in the living room, she could still hear the commotion upstairs. "Mom, how am I supposed to fit all this stuff?" "That's enough already. Take out the smoked salmon." "Why would I bring that?" "What do you mean enough? This smoked salmon is a local specialty. You can't get this in a big city like Boston. Take it for the Samuel Shaws to try. If they like it, tell Mom, and I'll mail them some more." "Mom, it's all clothes. Won't they end up smelling if you pack them together?" "I wrapped them in plastic bags for you. They won't smell." When Michael Thompson finally came downstairs, lugging a large suitcase with a big duffel bag slung over his shoulder, he appeared in the living room looking utterly helpless. Clearly, when it came to stubbornness, he was no match for his old mom, Margaret Thompson. Seeing Michael Thompson's exasperated expression, Olivia Sullivan covered her mouth, giggling softly. Margaret Thompson followed behind Michael, still chattering away. "Once you're out the door, staying at the Samuel Shaws isn't like being at home. If anything bothers you, you just have to put up with it, understand? You need to treat Mrs. Shaw just like your own parents. We're simple folks, you need to know the proper etiquette. Mom, Mrs. Shaw's great to me. If her daughter wasn't too young, she'd practically be trying to marry us off. Don't worry about it." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Little Olivia Sullivan is right here. Margaret rolled up her sleeves, pinched her son's ear, and warned him, from now on, you treat little Olivia Sullivan better, understand? You've got such a wonderful girl with you. You need to appreciate her. She turned to Olivia Sullivan, beaming, little Olivia Sullivan, if this boy Michael Thompson doesn't treat you well in the future, you tell Aunt Maggie. Aunt Maggie will sort him out for you. Michael Thompson had expected Olivia Sullivan to shyly say something about how well he treated her, but unexpectedly, little Miss Olivia beamed cheekily and said, Did you hear that? You can't bully me anymore. Aunt Maggie's got my back now. Margaret Thompson said in surprise. Huh? Michael Thompson doesn't treat you well. The hand pinching Michael Thompson's ear immediately tightened its grip. Michael Thompson quickly slapped at her hand, explaining, Mom, don't listen to her nonsense. I'm the kind of guy who practically has good man carved on his forehead. Great, Michael thought. Little Miss Olivia was comfortable enough to joke like this in front of his mom now. Looked like she was fitting into the family nicely. He'd remember that smug, spoiled little expression of hers. He'd get her back later. Olivia Sullivan suddenly shivered, pointed at Michael Thompson, and said to Margaret Thompson, Aunt Maggie, Michael Thompson is planning to get back at me after we leave. Michael Thompson. This girl, Olivia, it was like she could read his mind. After having lunch at the Thompsons, Michael Thompson and Olivia Sullivan finally set off back to school. Robert Thompson drove them personally, and Emily Thompson hitched a ride with them to the train station. The return journey was just as arduous. Mainly because Green Valley had neither high-speed rail nor an airport, they had to take a regular train to Riverside City, transfer there to a high-speed train to Shanghai, and then catch a flight from Shanghai to Boston. If they didn't want to deal with all the transfers, they could take a bus directly to the Shanghai airport, but that would take much longer, a full 8 hours on the bus. Michael Thompson and Olivia chose the first option. They left at 11 in the morning, but it was already past 8 in the evening by the time they arrived in Boston. Michael, Olivia, I'm not going with you too, Emily Thompson announced as they walked out of the airport, ready to part ways. Her school was in a different district from Michael and Olivia's, though they'd take the same bus from the airport into the city. Michael Thompson was surprised. Wow, sis, did you finally get the hint? I was trying to figure out how to get rid of our third wheel. As if I want to tag along with you too. Emily Thompson rolled her eyes at him. My girlfriend is picking me up. We got plans tonight. Should he expect anything less from the social butterfly, Emily? Michael wondered. She'd just gotten off the plane and already had plans lined up for the night. After Emily Thompson grabbed her suitcase and breezed off, Michael Thompson turned to Olivia Sullivan. It's still early. Once we get back to the city, how about we grab dinner and catch a movie? Oh, right. Did you bring your ID? Olivia Sullivan looked startled for a moment. Do you need an ID to watch movies now? Some theaters might require it. Michael Thompson fibbed with a straight face. Olivia Sullivan didn't quite catch on, but she looked down, tapped her phone a few times, and said somewhat sheepishly, Actually, not tonight. I already made plans with Claire Evans. Michael Thompson said cheekily, Well, surely, two lovely ladies wouldn't mind having a gentleman along to cover the bill. Olivia Sullivan handed him her phone. Michael took it and saw her chat history with Claire Evans. Claire Evans, babe, what time do you get to Boston? Miss you so much. Olivia Sullivan. Plane lands around 8-ish? Claire Evans. Okay, let's hit the salon tonight, get our hair done, and grab dinner after. I found this amazing place. Claire Evans. Just the two of us. No Michael Thompson allowed. It's been ages since we had a proper bestie dinner. This girl. Michael Thompson's mouth twitched as he read. He said sourly, I haven't even called you babe yet. Olivia Sullivan pressed her lips together, smiling. Well, you can call me that now. Never mind. Calling you that now feels like someone else beat me to it. Damn it, she's my girlfriend. Michael Thompson looked vexed, feeling like he'd missed his chance. Seeing his childish side, Olivia Sullivan skipped around to face him, clasping her hands behind her back and smiling shyly. Well, can I call you that? Call me what? Just, babe. She lowered her head, looking embarrassed and a bit shy. Michael Thompson felt goosebumps break out all over. He shivered slightly and rubbed his arms. It's kind of cringy, but also kind of addictive. Say it a couple more times so I can get used to it. You're impossible. Olivia Sullivan pouted, huffed indignantly, grabbed her small suitcase, and walked off, ignoring Michael Thompson. Michael Thompson grinned and followed her. Michael Thompson and Olivia Sullivan parted ways at the subway station. Olivia Sullivan needed to meet Claire Evans, and they weren't taking the same subway line. Although he wanted to escort Olivia Sullivan, the still pouting Miss Olivia had stubbornly refused him. So, Michael Thompson could only walk her to her platform and watch her train disappear into the distance before pulling out his phone, checking it repeatedly, confirming no one had messaged him, and muttering to himself, "Well, damn. Looks like everyone has plans. I'm the only one back with nobody to meet. Got it. Turns out, I'm the clown." Michael had planned to grab dinner with his buddy Jake, but a call came in from Howard Banks. Hearing Michael was back in Boston, Howard urged him to hurry home, saying Elizabeth Shaw knew he was returning today and had already prepared a whole table full of delicious food. The Thompson family was waiting for him. Michael wouldn't dream of keeping Howard waiting hungry, so he decided to head home first. When he reached Howard's townhouse, the courtyard gate was slightly ajar, clearly left open for him. "Howard, Elizabeth, I'm home." As he entered, he saw Howard Banks sitting on the sofa, happily slurping a meatball sub. Beside him, a little girl was copying him, awkwardly trying to eat noodles from a small bowl with chopsticks. Michael dropped his luggage and complained playfully, "Hey, you didn't wait for me. If I waited for you, my stomach wouldn't forgive me. Had to get something in me first." Howard chuckled, then looked past Michael. "Didn't your girlfriend come with you? I thought you two would be together. She went out to eat with friends today. The moment I heard you call, Howard, I dropped everything. Didn't even stay with my girlfriend, and came straight home," Michael said, shamelessly twisting the fact that Olivia had ditched him into a story about choosing Howard over his girlfriend as he knelt to unpack his suitcase. Howard Banks knew his apprentice's character all too well and scoffed. "Oh, give me a break. You're the type to always choose beauty over duty. Lucky for you, you're not a player. At least you stick to one girl." Though he was being teased, Michael grinned, taking it as a compliment. He pulled out some gifts his mother had asked him to bring. "Elizabeth, Mom sent over some smoked salmon. Should I take it to the kitchen?" Elizabeth Shaw poked her head out of the kitchen, beaming. "Oh, look at you. Just coming home is enough. You don't need to bring gifts when you come to our home. And your mother, too. Always so formal. Don't bring anything next time, okay?" "It's nothing expensive," Michael said, carrying the salmon into the kitchen. "Just a local specialty from back home. Thought you might like to try it." He then took a carefully wrapped bottle out of his suitcase, unwrapped the bubble packaging, checked it, and handed it to Howard. "Howard, I brought something for you, too. Herbal liqueur. I brewed it myself. What did you bring this for? I don't really drink. It's medicinal wine. Good for your health. Warms you up, boosts circulation." Michael leaned closer to Howard and lowered his voice. "And it has other benefits. Good for a man's vitality." "You brat, honestly." "No respect." Howard put on a stern expression, but his other hand nonchalantly tucked the bottle behind his back. "Don't bring things like this next time." Just then, Elizabeth emerged from the kitchen carrying a large soup tureen, placing it on the dining table. She looked towards the living room where the master and apprentice were acting suspiciously. "What are you two whispering about? Go wash your hands. Dinner's ready." "Ahem." Both men coughed awkwardly, one looking at the ceiling, the other at the floor, pretending nothing was amiss. Elizabeth gave them a puzzled look and muttered, "Acting so weird." At dinner, Elizabeth Shaw had indeed gone all out, preparing a feast. Truth be told, her cooking was far better than Michael's mother, Margaret Thompson's. Her skills weren't far off from a chef at a fancy restaurant. Her dishes were refined, somewhat like New Orleans cuisine, especially the delicate pastries, which were small, exquisite, and delicious. Michael thoroughly enjoyed the meal. He had skipped eating much on the road after lunch at home to make good time, so he was genuinely starving now. Howard, having already finished the meatball sub, wasn't particularly hungry. He was sipping slowly from a small cup of the liqueur Michael had brought, occasionally picking at the food with his chopsticks. Elizabeth asked Michael many questions, mostly about how his parents were doing and if anything new was happening with the Thompson family. Michael answered each one. Beside him, Howard Banks chuckled. "Speaking of which, when you went back for Thanksgiving break, did you and your girlfriend meet the parents?" Elizabeth immediately perked up, smiling with keen interest. "Oh, did that happen? You took her home to meet your parents already?" Michael didn't hide it. "Yeah, I'd thought about it before, but it just happened now." "So proactive?" Elizabeth clicked her tongue in mild surprise. She knew Michael was dating a girl from neighboring Harvard University, but having been a university teacher for many years, she'd seen countless campus romances. Very few lasted. Most ended with graduation. Michael asked curiously, "But how did you know, Howard?" "Arthur Sullivan called me. He suspected you two were serious for a while, but he didn't expect his granddaughter to bring you home so soon," Howard said, looking rather pleased. "Arthur's granddaughter is gorgeous, isn't she? But it looks like our piglet managed to snag the prize." Michael thought, "I feel like I was just insulted, and I have proof." "Still, you've connected with a good family," Howard continued, turning serious. "Arthur Sullivan has some influence. If he supports you, it'll make certain things much easier." He added a warning, but don't you dare think about just playing around with his granddaughter. If things go sour between you two, Arthur and I will fall out, and it'll be awkward for everyone." Michael's expression turned solemn. "Howard, I've never had such intentions. Actually, I plan to marry Olivia Sullivan after graduation." She's agreed. "Graduation? Mary?" Howard and Elizabeth exclaimed in unison. "You mean university graduation?" Elizabeth looked at him, astonished. "Why the rush?" Michael shrugged. "It's not like I'm going to change my mind. She's the one." Elizabeth couldn't help but advise, "Have you really thought this through? Marriage isn't something to be taken lightly. I think you should consider it very carefully." "I decided a long time ago," Michael stated firmly. "Anyway, you have to spend your life with someone, right? I feel like Olivia is destined for me. It's something I definitely won't regret." Elizabeth wanted to say more, but Howard waved a hand. "What are you worrying for? He's only a freshman. He'll be 23 when he graduates, old enough to get married legally. What's the big deal? As long as he's thought it through, that's what matters. You've met Arthur Sullivan's granddaughter. She's a nice girl. Nothing to worry about." He turned back to Michael. "But dating is dating. You can't neglect your responsibilities. While you were home, you haven't just been slacking off, have you?" "I've still been practicing my painting every day," Michael assured him. Howard nodded. He trusted Michael on this. His apprentice was talented and hardworking, not the type who needed constant pushing to put in the effort. Though Michael could be flighty sometimes, he was absolutely serious about his art. "In the next few days," Howard said, "I'll sort out leave from school for you. I'll take you over to Bossia's Hot Springs Resort for some inspiration. Don't feel too pressured. Just think of it as relaxing for a few days." "Howard, I don't think I need that anymore." October 22nd was the opening day of the National Young Artist Competition. Organized by the Chinese Calligraphers and Painters Association, this was quite a prestigious event, so Howard Banks took it very seriously. What made it particularly noteworthy was that eligibility was limited to young calligraphers and painters under 30. In simple terms, it was a competition for the younger generation, aimed at cultivating new talent in the art world and giving young people a chance to shine. The most prestigious competition Michael had participated in before was the Chi Baisha Award. However, that event included many long-established masters, and in the end, he didn't secure an official ranking but received the New Artist Award. This time, though, there were no such renowned veterans. Therefore, Howard Banks had set only one goal for his apprentice: win the Gold Award. Michael was still very young, only 19 this year. He could potentially participate in a National Young Artist Competition 11 more times. Some competitors had likely been studying painting for longer than Michael had been alive. Yet, Howard Banks had strict requirements and high hopes for Michael, believing he could achieve it. Genius shouldn't be measured by ordinary standards. Although Howard held Michael in high regard and believed in his potential, Michael's painting skills had stagnated over the past 6 months, stuck at a bottleneck. This troubled Howard, his master. It wasn't that Michael wasn't working hard or lacked talent. He just couldn't find that essential spark of inspiration. It felt like he was just one final step away, but couldn't seem to take it. Worried he might be putting too much pressure on his apprentice, Howard thought it over and decided to take him on an inspiration trip to a scenic location. The idea was twofold: to help Michael find inspiration and to let him relax and unwind, preventing his mood from becoming too strained. It had to be said, Howard was a remarkably dedicated teacher. Although he had a bit of a temper and was often eager for Michael to achieve quick success, his sincere care for his disciple was genuine. Seeking inspiration outdoors wasn't unusual for painters. When Howard Banks was young, he loved traveling the world with his drawing board. He had admired the snows of the Alps and witnessed the boundless expanse of the Bohai Sea, traveling from Central America abroad and back again. Only now that he was older and couldn't travel as much had he settled down, taking a position at the university as an educator. Since the competition date was fast approaching, Howard didn't plan to take Michael too far. The Hot Springs Resort wasn't far from Boston, just a day's drive away. They had agreed on this plan before the Thanksgiving break, while Michael was still away from home. However, what Howard hadn't expected was that when he brought up the trip again, Michael told him it wasn't necessary. A possibility immediately struck Howard. He drew in a sharp breath, eyes widening. "You mean, you're past your bottleneck?" Michael nodded. He picked up his travel bag, took out a long box from inside, and handed it to Howard Banks. "I've already finished my entry for the competition. Samuel Shaw, would you take a look?" Howard Banks quickly reached out and took the box. Opening it revealed a rolled-up scroll, painting inside. He carefully took it out, unrolled it, then fished a pair of reading glasses from his breast pocket. Putting them on, he began examining the painting with a serious expression. Michael waited nearby, He had been full of confidence, but seeing Howard stare at the painting in silence for so long made him a bit nervous. After what felt like a long time, Howard let out a breath and nodded firmly, his voice strong. Good. Only then did Michael heave a sigh of relief, a smile spreading across his face. The spirit that was lacking in your previous works. I finally see it in this piece. You truly are a genius. Howard rarely praised Michael, but this time he held nothing back. At your age, I probably wasn't even half as good. Michael looked at him quizzically, asking cautiously, but Samuel Shaw, you don't seem very happy. This remark hit home. Howard sighed, his expression tinged with melancholy. Honestly, sometimes I wonder if some people are just born with innate knowledge. Or perhaps true geniuses don't need others to teach them. They just naturally develop their talents. He picked up the painting again, looking it up and down. Your foundation in traditional Chinese painting comes from your family, learning the Wu School style. I taught you the Hudson River School. The Wu School excels at landscapes, while the Jiang School excels at birds, animals, plum blossoms, orchids, bamboo, and chrysanthemums. But you excel at capturing the myriad facets of human life. Although this style has the underpinnings of ink wash, it also incorporates the colors and chiaroscuro techniques of Western painting. Michael, you're an unconventional talent. In carving, you surpassed your painting skills through self-study. And in the Jiang School style I taught you, you've managed to integrate the strengths of various schools, something I couldn't possibly teach you. Looking at this painting, I can't help but think that I, as your master, perhaps haven't helped you much. Howard genuinely felt a sense of inadequacy. He had devoted himself wholeheartedly to Michael's instruction, never slacking off. Yet, seeing Michael's skill, he often felt his contribution was minimal. His apprentice learned so much on his own. Perhaps this was the peculiar frustration of mentoring an exceptionally prodigious talent. However, Michael knew his own situation. He wasn't quite that prodigious. He already possessed a strong foundation in painting from his previous life, having reached a level sufficient to hold exhibitions abroad and gain considerable fame. His original background was in Western painting. Learning traditional Chinese painting in this life, he hadn't discarded his foundation but naturally merged the two. Furthermore, although his system was mostly unobtrusive, it functioned perfectly as a learning machine, providing him with the best guidance and ample time. A single night's dream training session for him was equivalent to 80 hours of intense, focused study for someone else, an incredibly high learning efficiency. Combined with his inherent talent, achieving such results wasn't surprising at all. Howard's comment, perhaps some people are just born with innate knowledge, was just a sigh of emotion. But inadvertently, it hit upon the truth of Michael's situation. Michael shook his head. Samuel Shaw, how could you think that? A foundation isn't built out of thin air. I'm not an ungrateful person, nor would I lie. Without you, Samuel Shaw, I probably wouldn't even be on this path of painting. Howard was just being unnecessarily sentimental. Hearing Michael's words, he realized it made sense. Most importantly, having a brilliant student was far better than teaching a poor one. Thinking this, he felt a sense of relief and pride. All right, leave the painting with me. I'll have it mounted in the next couple of days and submit it for judging. Howard kept the painting, placing it back in a long box. Only then did he remember to ask, by the way, does this painting have a name? Yes. What is it? Home.